Chapter 2377. Boom! In an instant, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Countless auras of annihilation filled the air and were torn apart in an instant. A huge dragon condensed from countless laws in the sky and shrouded directly. It opened its bloody mouth and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to swallow him. Fortunately, you're not a friend of Ao Chaozong. Otherwise, don't even think of living past today. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly and said, in any case, Ao Chaozong was an opponent that must be defeated. But with just you? Do you want to test my cultivation? Yi Shiwen stepped forward, and the spiritual power in his body had been raised to the peak. He directly blasted out a punch. It was the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The mighty animal Tao, countless ferocious birds and beasts rushed out in a frenzy. Dragons, phoenixes, Qilins by Fong, and many other legendary powerful birds and beasts suddenly emerged. These boundless divine beasts formed an incomparably huge tide, a terrifying tide that could engulf everything. Compared to the human Tao fist, the animal Tao was more ferocious and invincible in group battles. The dragon was swallowed alive by these countless ferocious beasts before it could swallow Yi Shiwen. These ferocious beasts did not lose their momentum and rushed towards Ao Shaoqing. Damn, how can it be the animal Tao? Ao Shaoqing's cultivation was powerful. At the same time, he was also born in a force with a long history like the Dragon Island. He was very knowledgeable and could recognize the famous and tyrannical fist technique of the animal Tao. It was just that in his impression, it seemed that no one could practice such a tyrannical martial technique because there were not so many blood essences of ferocious beasts and mythological beasts for them to practice. Moreover, he had practiced the animal Tao to such an extent. It was simply incredible. He retreated again and again. In an instant, he had retreated hundreds of miles to avoid the attack of the animal Tao. The dragon race's movement technique was also famous for being tyrannical. Although it was not as good as the demon wings, it was still one of the few movement techniques in the world. Impenetrable by all laws and indestructible by all tribulations. He roared, and bursts of golden light erupted from his body. These golden lights were vast and mighty. They isolated everything. Even the omnipresent cause and effect in the world was blocked. Yi Shiwen's animal Tao was instantly blocked by these golden lights and disappeared into nothingness. At this time, he had already raised the danger level of Yi Shiwen again and again. He didn't dare to underestimate Yi Shiwen in the slightest. He roared crazily, and his hands directly condensed into a huge seal technique. Heavenly Dragon Seal. The huge Heavenly Dragon Seal once again transformed into a 9-clawed golden dragon. It grew larger and larger as if it could swallow everything. It's actually the Heavenly Dragon Seal. I didn't expect him to have mastered such a heaven-defying cultivation method after not seeing him for hundreds of years. This was Yun Keiji. He had known Ao Shaoqing for a very long time. They had known each other hundreds of years ago during their travels. However, at that time, Ao Shaoqing did not know how to use the Heavenly Dragon Seal. Yun Keiji did not expect that Ao Shaoqing would know how to use it now. He couldn't help but feel a little envious. Compared to other people, as long as they had enough talent, it was only a matter of time before these people who came from rich and powerful families could obtain divine abilities in martial arts that were difficult for outsiders to obtain. This is the Heavenly Dragon Seal? No wonder. According to the legends, the ancestral dragon once relied on the Heavenly Dragon Seal to shatter countless worlds in one fell swoop. This can be considered as one of the few seal techniques in the world. It's simply indestructible. The Heavenly Dragon Seal has such a reputation. It's really extraordinary. Others also voiced out one after another. Their evaluation of Ao Shaoqing was also constantly improving. At their level of cultivation, there was not much difference between their martial skills. However, the cultivation method they practiced was very likely to determine the outcome of the battle. It's just the Heavenly Dragon Seal. You're still far from being able to compare with Ao Chaozong. Even your Heavenly Dragon Seal can't compare with him. Yi Shiwen sneered. Both of his hands unexpectedly formed a seal technique. It formed the overturning sky seal. The world was about to be overturned by this seal technique. Overturning Sky Seal. Overturning the world. Carrying supreme power, Yi Shiwen took a step forward. The overturning Sky Seal in his hand fiercely turned over and blasted towards Ao Shaoqing. Boom! An incomparably loud explosion sounded. The overturning Sky Seal and the Heavenly Dragon Seal directly collided. Compared to Ao Chaozong's Heavenly Dragon Seal, Ao Shaoqing's Heavenly Dragon Seal still had a huge disparity. That huge dragon's head was smashed to smithereens by Yi Shiwen's overturning Sky Seal, and blood splattered everywhere. In front of the overturning Sky Seal, the Heavenly Dragon Seal was simply too weak. Ah! Ao Shaoqing let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire palm was drenched in blood from Yi Shiwen's attack. He was completely at a disadvantage. He constantly retreated, not daring to approach. What kind of seal technique is this? It can even break the Heavenly Dragon Seal of Extreme Yang. It's unimaginable. Yun Keiji's eyes widened as he stared at the overturning Sky Seal on Yi Shiwen's palm. There was an unusual greed in his eyes. One must know that a good power technique was very rare even for these deity-level experts. They would need countless years to perfect a powerful power technique. After all, they didn't have the help of the mysterious space like Yi Shiwen did. So in comparison, it was easier to directly obtain the ancient inheritance. The Heavenly Dragon Seal was undoubtedly one of the world's top magical martial arts. Even if it was completely useless in front of the overturning Sky Seal, they would not underestimate this tyrannical technique developed by the ancestral dragon. This was only Ao Shaoqing's own lack of strength. It did not mean that the Heavenly Dragon Seal was weak. Even so, the power of the overturning Sky Seal was still an eye-opener for him. If I can obtain such a powerful seal technique, I will definitely be able to go one step further. Even if I can't break through to the Eternal Realm in one go, it will be enough to dominate the Eternal Realm. I must get it. He opened his god's eye and wanted to see through the overturning Sky Seal that Yi Shiwen had cast. In his eyes, the overturning Sky Seal was incomparably complicated. It was not something that he could study in a short time. Yi Shiwen had used the mysterious space to deduce for almost 1,000 years to achieve its current power. It was impossible for him to learn it with just a few glances. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen did not care about this. His palm turned into the overturning Sky Seal. He chased after it and directly blasted it towards Ao Shaoqing. Roar! Ao Shaoqing had been forced into a dead end. He never thought that Yi Shiwen could be so tyrannical. It was simply unparalleled. At this critical moment, he finally displayed all his skills. Dragon Emperor Precious Bell. He let out a loud roar, and an incomparably huge ancient bronze bell appeared around him. This ancient bronze bell was engraved with countless long dragons. They stood in a special position, forming an incomparably huge array that could make all attacks invisible. Bang! Yi Shiwen's overturning Sky Seal smashed down and directly fell on the ancient bronze bell. There was a loud bang, and countless ripples directly swept out. All the terrifying power that Yi Shiwen had bombarded down was directly reflected by the ancient bronze bell in the form of energy sound waves. It even formed a huge wave, overturning towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not hesitate and directly blasted out a punch, shattering this energy wave. Only then did he stop. Dragon Emperor Precious Bell. How is it possible? The Dragon Emperor's Precious Bell? How is that possible? How could he have an Emperor Dao treasure? It is said that this is the ancestral dragon's accompanying celestial device. It is very powerful. The person who has the Dragon Emperor's Precious Bell can be said to be invincible. That golden light just now was from the Dragon Emperor's Precious Bell. Hiss! In the Dragon Emperor's Precious Bell, he is almost invincible, Aksu said with his eyes wide open. He was completely speechless when he thought of the rumored celestial tool. If it was really the legendary celestial tool, as a Dao-confirming expert, he would almost be on his knees on the spot. He is indeed a famous genius of the Dragon Clan. This Ao Shaoqing is really strong. He can even get a celestial tool like the Dragon Emperor Precious Bell. Mo Gunnis' eyes were also rippling. Who did not want the Dragon Emperor Precious Bell? No, This is not the Dragon Emperor Precious Bell. If it was the Dragon Emperor Precious Bell, we would all be dead. Mu Yinshi suddenly came to a realization. According to the legend, the Dragon Emperor Precious Bell can amplify all attacks in the form of energy waves and counterattack. If it is the legendary celestial tool, I am afraid we would all be dead by now. When he said this, he looked at Yi Shiwen, obviously reminding him. At that moment, Ao Xiaoqing finally calmed down and said, "That's right. This isn't the real Dragon Emperor Precious Bell. It's a celestial tool that's made by immortal level." Although it was just a replica celestial tool, he was extremely proud of it. He said, although it's just a replica celestial tool, it's still one of the best low-grade celestial tools. With the cultivation level of immortal level, it's absolutely impossible to break it. The more powerful your attack, the more powerful the counterattack will be. By then, you can only kill yourself. Yi Shiwen, you've forced my Dragon Emperor's precious bell to come out. You're quite capable. However, this is the end of your performance. I'll beat you to a pulp next. The way he looked at Yi Shiwen was unusually sharp. He had never suffered such a big loss before, especially when he was defeated by a guy in the middle of the immortal level in front of everyone. He had lost all his face in front of everyone. He had lost all of his face. Yi Shiwen's eyes were sharp as he looked at Yi Shiwen. He wanted to get revenge from Yi Shiwen. This is the end. Yi Shiwen, you'd better wake up. He took a step forward and took out the Heavenly Dragon Seal on the spot. He attacked Yi Shiwen. Since he had the Dragon Emperor Precious Bell to protect him, he did not have to worry about attacking. The Heavenly Dragon Seal grew bigger and bigger. It was like a long dragon that came crashing down. Chapter 2378. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen with sympathy in their eyes. With the protection of the Dragon Emperor's precious bell, Ao Xiaoqing was like a super iron tortoise in their eyes. They could not break him at all. Therefore, Ao Xiaoqing could attack as much as he wanted. In contrast, Yi Shiwen could not attack with all his strength. He had to divide part of his strength to defend. Therefore, he was at a disadvantage from the beginning. The big sects were indeed different. What Dragon Emperor's precious bell? Break it! Facing the incoming Heavenly Dragon Seal, Yi Shiwen did not give way. With a roar, the demon's summoning banner covered his body and protected him. Then, a long sword appeared in his hand. The sky-breaking sword suddenly burst out with an amazing sword light. It rushed into the sky and shook many laws. With the long sword in hand, the world was mine. With the long sword in hand, Yi Shiwen was like the incarnation of swordsmanship. The world shook as if it was about to be turned into powder by his sword light. It could be seen that some spaces had been turned into glass by his sword radiance. It looked very terrifying. Unparalleled power spread out. On this continent, countless demonic beasts started to move. They felt that the world had suddenly changed. All the laws that they could barely feel were suddenly suppressed by the swordsmanship laws. It was as if this was the legendary sword realm. With the power of one person, he had suppressed the laws of the world. His strength could be imagined. Break for me! The sky-breaking sword in Yi Shiwen's hand swept out. The Heavenly Dragon Seal was broken in front of everyone's eyes, and the huge Heavenly Dragon was chopped into two halves. However, Yi Shiwen's sword momentum didn't decrease at all, and fiercely chopped the Dragon Emperor's treasure bell. Bang! With a loud roar, the Dragon Emperor's precious bell was sent flying along with Ao Xiaoqing. The boundless sword force was still shaking the void, and a formless aura spread out, causing people to feel a chill down their spines. Everyone was stunned. The defensive power of the Dragon Emperor's precious bell was indeed top-notch among the lower-grade divine weapons. It was not a lie to say that it was invincible. It was a fact. It was impossible for an ordinary person to break through the defense of the Dragon Emperor's precious bell. They might even be sent flying by the recoil of the Dragon Emperor's precious bell. It could be said that Ao Xiaoqing was indeed a genius to be able to cultivate the Dragon Emperor's precious bell. But he was still sent flying by Yi Shiwen's sword. What was even more frightening was that they could clearly see that cracks had appeared on the Dragon Emperor's precious bell. This was the most unbelievable thing. In their eyes, this was an unbreakable divine weapon but it had actually cracked. Puff! Ao Xiaoqing spat out a mouthful of blood as cracks appeared on the Dragon Emperor's precious bell. Even if there were only a few cracks, it meant that the Dragon Emperor's precious bell couldn't completely block all the attacks. A portion of the attacks had fallen on his body. Given Yi Shiwen's strength, it was enough to seriously injure him. The Dragon Emperor's precious bell's counterattack was completely absorbed by the demon summoning flag. It did not affect Yi Shiwen at all. Ao Xiaoqing was right. The Dragon Emperor's precious bell could not be broken by an ordinary immortal level. Unfortunately, he met Yi Shiwen, a monster. Not only was his explosive power the best among immortal levels, but the Sky Breaker sword in his hand was also a rare weapon even among immortal levels. All of them added up to cause cracks to appear on his Dragon Emperor's precious bell. Just when Yi Shiwen was about to go further and break his tortoise shell, Yun Keiji suddenly attacked. Suddenly, Yun Keiji made his move. Boundless cloud chi erupted in the sky and sealed everything. It also blocked Yi Shiwen's path of attack. "Brother Yi, please have mercy." Yi Shiwen retracted his aura and didn't chase after him. Since he wasn't on Ao Chaozong's side, and even wanted to challenge Ao Chaozong, Yi Shiwen wouldn't kill him. He would just teach him a lesson. He had achieved his goal of establishing his dominance. To outsiders, he looked like a mid-stage immortal level again. However, nobody dared to look down on this mid-stage immortal level anymore, especially Arcas, who was the first to arrive. Fortunately, he did not attack back then. Otherwise, he would be the one who would be taught a lesson now. Mu Yunxi opened her mouth, but she did not know what to say. Although she had a guess about Yi Shiwen's ability, it was just a guess. It was even more ridiculous than her guess. She thought Yi Shiwen could only fight peak-level immortal levels at most. Now, it seemed like he was not just fighting, but he was terrifying. Master's evaluation of him was right. His future was limitless, and his achievements were unimaginable. "Why? Are you going to help him?" Yi Shiwen said coldly while looking at Yun Keiji. Although Yun Keiji did not do anything earlier, he was not friendly to Yi Shiwen. Naturally, Yi Shiwen would not be nice to him now. Seeing Yi Shiwen's attitude, Yun Keiji was a little angry, but he suppressed it immediately and said, "It's okay." Ao Xiaoqing was a little reckless just now, but he was thinking about the safety of our team. "You should know that the God Burial Star Ocean is dangerous, especially the Dharma King's tomb. There are many dangers that we can't imagine. If we don't try to understand each other's abilities, I'm afraid some accidents will happen. But I'm sure Brother Yi is broad-minded. You won't be so calculative," Yun Keiji said while looking at Yi Shiwen and Mu Yunxi. Yi Shiwen sneered. He knew what Yun Keiji was thinking. Yun Keiji was trying to stop him with words so that he could not continue attacking. However, it just so happened that he did not intend to continue attacking. However, this incident also gave him a wake-up call. This team might not be as united as he thought. It was more of a combination of benefits than a common interest. The thought of taking everything for himself grew stronger in his heart. He might even have to be careful of these people. They might be more dangerous than the ominous beasts and the celestial race. However, he could not say this out loud. He could only hide it deep in his heart. His expression did not change. "Since you're speaking up for him, I'll give you face. However, if he still tries to provoke me, then don't blame me for putting on a show of slaying a dragon," Yi Shiwen said indifferently. "What did you say?" Ao Xiaoqing was furious. The dragon race was one of the strongest races in the world. They were often the standard by which people measure their strength. Slaying a dragon had also become a symbol of glory for many people. Therefore, the dragon race had always been very sensitive in this aspect. "Are you deaf?" Yi Shiwen said without any trace of politeness. Ao Xiaoqing was furious. He wanted to fight with Yi Shiwen, but then he thought that he might not be Yi Shiwen's opponent. He could only give up. For a genius of the dragon race like him, this was simply a miracle. No one had ever been able to threaten him. "All right, let's stop arguing. We've already wasted some time. Now, the most important thing is to hurry to the tomb of the Law King and stop the remnants of the celestial race," Yun Keiji said. Seeing that Yi Shiwen was still willing to give him face, he was still a little proud. He barely suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart. Yes, let's not continue arguing on this issue. There's no point at all. Muyinshi came out and said. Finally, everyone reluctantly reached an agreement. One by one, they activated their escape lights and flew towards the tomb of the Law King in the distance. The group of people flew in front and behind. However, generally speaking, they were still within a certain range. Yi Shiwen and Mu Yunshi were naturally the closest to each other. Brother, your sky-splitting sword was bestowed to you by the master, right? Mu Yunshi said through telepathy. She had seen the sky-splitting sword on the Lord of Flames before. That was the sword that the Lord of Flames used before he became a divine lord of the Sage Realm. It could be said to be a very precious treasure. She had never seen him bestow it to anyone. She did not expect him to give it to Yi Shiwen. Yes, it is indeed a magic tool bestowed by the master. Yi Shiwen nodded. Without the sky-splitting sword, although Yi Shiwen was not afraid of the Dragon Emperor's precious bell, he would still need to spend a lot of effort to break it. After all, he was only at the middle stage of the immortal level. He was not at the peak of the immortal level. The master is so nice to you, Mu Yunshi said enviously. I'm really sorry about what happened today. I did not expect that there would be someone from the dragon tribe. Mu Yunshi quickly took the opportunity to apologize. She had never expected that there would be someone from the dragon tribe. One must know that Yi Shiwen and the Dragon Island were not on good terms. This was probably a well-known secret. It's nothing. After all, man proposes, God disposes. Yi Shiwen said. But sister, is it really okay to go to the tomb of the Law King with such a team? Sai, who knows? But we have no other choice. It's not easy to join such a team. It's very difficult to find companions who are on the same level as us and have gone through many trials. It took me a long time to form this team, Mu Yunshi said, but you can rest assured. After all, the two of us are from the same sect. We can't compare to them. Today, you have offended all of them. Perhaps only Mo Guna is slightly better. You have to be especially careful of Yun Keiji. He is not easy to deal with. His strength is tyrannical, and he is also very scheming. Be careful not to fall into his trap. A smile appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. He then said, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Even if he really wants to deal with me, he needs to have the strength to do so. In the face of real strength, all schemes are a joke. Chapter 2379. If those people thought that what Yi Shiwen had shown just now was his true strength, then they were gravely mistaken. In the face of these unknown people, how could Yi Shiwen not hold back? He could also see that they probably had not shown all their abilities, but it didn't matter. It was more than enough to protect himself. Mu Yunshi looked at Yi Shiwen and didn't know where he got such confidence. But in the end, she could only conclude that the skilled were bold, and he did have such capital. Junior brother, you are young and proud. Junior brother, you are young and proud. You should be less than 1,000 years old, right? Less than 1,000 years old, but you have already proved the way. You could be called an unprecedented cultivation genius. Compared with you, I am far inferior. I have already wasted tens of thousands of years before I proved the way. Now more than 10,000 years have passed, and I have barely stepped into the peak of the longevity realm. If there are no other fortuitous encounters, perhaps after tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, I also have the opportunity to break into the eternal realm. But this process is really too long, and it is not certain that there will be any accidents. How many of us immortal beings have fallen? Mu Yunshi couldn't help but sigh. Compared to the gods, tens of thousands of years old was just a young and tender thing, not even ancient, not even reaching the mainstream level. However, in the face of Yi Shiwen, who was only about 1,000 years old, she couldn't help but have a kind of sigh in her heart. It was really the case of the Yangtze River's new waves pushing the old waves, and the old waves dying on the beach. As a senior, she was really under a lot of pressure. And to break into the eternal realm, the most important thing is to condense the Godhead. And to condense the Godhead, it requires far more than just hard practice, but also all kinds of fortuitous encounters. It is best to have the Godhead of the eternal realm for us to refer to, but how can the Godhead of the eternal realm be so easy to find? Except in this kind of tomb, there is no other possibility. Even the gods dare not have the slightest indulgence, and can only go forward step by step. Mu Yunshi said. He was also very clear about Mu Yunshi's situation. Wasn't it the same for him? He had finally succeeded in proving his Tao with great difficulty, but due to various reasons, he had no choice but to cultivate crazily. So what if he had reached the God realm? Wasn't it the same? It was just that he had a lot more time than ordinary people. That's all. If we are lucky this time, we might be able to obtain a godhood. Even if it is a damaged one, it would still be a great thing. When that happens, if we can comprehend the essence of the imperishable stage, I am confident that I will be able to advance further, Mu Yunshi said confidently. Tens of thousands of years of cultivation would not go to waste. Yi Shiwen, Yin Shi, I hope that we can help each other after we arrive at the 10,000 Dharma King's tomb. With the strength of the three of us, it should be more than enough to protect ourselves if we can work together. Mogana suddenly transmitted her voice from far away at this time. Yi Shiwen was quite astonished. Aren't you with them? Yi Shiwen was a little puzzled. He thought that Mo, Gunna, Yin Keiji, and the others were on the same side, while he and Mu Yunshi were on the other side. Who's on the same side as them? I'm just here with them. My relationship with Yunshi is the best. Usually it's fine, but since there's already a conflict between the two of you, I naturally have to stand on Yunshi's side. Emogana said matter-of-factly. Yi Shiwen looked at Mu Yunshi and saw her secretly nodding, indicating that she could trust him. Only then did he feel relieved. There was one more helper on his side. In this case, the ratio between them and the other side had become 4-3, and the gap had obviously narrowed. However, Yi Shiwen was also quite disgusted with scheming against his own teammates. He originally had the intention to act alone, and now he could not stop himself. At the very least, he could not let Yin Keiji and the others take advantage of him. At this time, Yin Keiji and the others were also carefully discussing. Yin Keiji, why didn't you make a move just now? If the few of us joined forces, would that brat still be so arrogant? I want to kill him and tear his corpse into 1,000 pieces. Ao Xiaoqing complained unhappily. He had lost face in front of the beautiful woman just now, and he was still brooding over it. Why are you so anxious? That brat is not easy to deal with. Besides, even if you don't want to give face to a monk, you still have to give face to Yunshi. Yun Keiji said indifferently. But you don't have to be anxious. I just haven't made a move because he still has some value. Don't worry. Although his strength is not bad, I am confident that I can suppress him. Besides, with your help, he cannot escape from my control. He had his own trump card. Even though Yi Shiwen had already displayed a considerable amount of strength, he was still very confident. This time, no one can stop us from obtaining the Dharma King's divine spark. As long as we can obtain the Dharma King's divine spark, we can comprehend it together. Breaking into the Eternal Realm is only a matter of time. Eternal Realm experts are true gods. Even if their bodies are completely destroyed, they can still be reborn. Even becoming a Sage Realm Divine Master is not a dream. At that time, we can each dominate a region, and even those regal sects will have no choice but to recruit us. Yin Keiji finally said his idea. It was far from as simple as snatching the 10,000 Dharma roulette. It was a deeper level of ambition. Ao Xiaoqing. At that time, you can also quickly catch up to Ao Chaozong. Who does he think he is? He is just relying on the complete inheritance of a Sage Realm expert in the past. He is simply not on the same level as the Dharma King. You also have hope of becoming the future Dragon Clan Patriarch. Yun Keiji said indifferently. That's right. As long as I get my hands on all of this, even Ao Chaozong won't be able to do anything. Those old fogies on Dragon Island only care about Ao Chaozong and don't care about me at all. I'll make sure they understand how ridiculous their mistakes are. I really want to see the expressions on their faces when we succeed. Ao Xiaoqing said fiercely. In his opinion, he was being looked down upon. Yes, he felt that he should be valued more. If he was valued enough, he would definitely not be inferior to Ao Chaozong. It was just that those people did not know how to appreciate him. These people all had great ambitions. No one was willing to let their cultivation stop at this step, especially when they were already at the peak of the Eternal Realm. They were only a step away from the eternal realm. No one was willing to stop at this stage. Especially when they were only a step away, they even had the ambition to break through to the legendary sage realm, divine master cultivation. If that's the case, then we'll let this kid live a little longer. If he's just a newbie, does he think that the world of gods is as simple as that of mortals? In the world of mortals, he might be invincible, but in the world of gods, he's just a newbie, Yang Shuping said coldly. At this time, the group had already passed through layers of space. An incomparably huge world appeared before their eyes. The tomb of the Dharma King had actually formed an incomparably huge world after countless years. One could imagine just how terrifying the strength of the Dharma King was. It was far from what the people at present could fathom. As soon as they entered this world, they clearly felt an unprecedented suppression. Everyone, be careful. We are now entering the tomb of the Dharma King. Here, our strength will be suppressed, while the people of the Celestials will be able to perform exceptionally well. We must be careful, Yun Keiji said at this time. Before coming here, he had clearly put in a lot of thought and made a lot of preparations. He was also very familiar with these things. Everyone nodded one after another. Yishuin also felt the suppression. This tomb could be said to be a place suitable for the cultivation of the Celestials. It would form a strong suppression for all the other races. A regent powerhouse was already so terrifying. How tyrannical would the real Emperor Lords be? How astonishing would the strength of the inheritances they created be? Although this tomb had a huge restriction and pressure, for these people who had successfully confirmed their Tao, it only slightly affected their combat power. They directly passed through. Not long after they entered, everyone could clearly feel that the spatial storms inside, as well as the ripping and severing of the laws, were much more severe than outside. At a glance, there were many tyrannical creatures living in groups. They were different from the creatures in the outside world. These creatures were born according to the laws of the 10,000 Dharma Kings. Every one of them was a powerful beast from the moment they were born. It was almost an innate instinct. Everyone was a Tao confirming expert. Their vitality was strong, and the aura of the laws that erupted from their bodies was like a firefly in the dark in the eyes of these beasts. They were quickly attracted over. Even many tyrannical divine senses that were comparable to Tao confirming experts swept over and locked onto everyone. We have to pass through quickly. We can't waste time here. Otherwise, if we are surrounded and seen by the people of the Celestials, it will not be good, Yun Keiji said. However, they were quickly entangled by some powerful beasts nearby. In fact, they weren't even ordinary life forms. They were powerful elementals created by storms. All of them had strength comparable to Tao corroboration cultivators. It wasn't that their comprehension was comparable to Tao corroboration cultivators. It was just that they were naturally powerful. However, compared to ordinary Tao confirming experts, they were still far inferior. However, their numbers were huge. Hundreds or thousands of them were a huge threat to Tao confirming experts. Chapter 2380. It was like a child carrying a knife. Although he might not have much strength, he might be able to kill an adult with the help of the sharp weapon in his hand. It was the same for these living beings. Although they might not pose too much of a threat to the gods individually, when thousands of them rushed over, it was overwhelming. It was as if a black storm had formed into a huge tornado and descended upon this world. In the sky, it formed a very powerful vortex. Yishuin opened the eyes of redemption and saw through the life essence of these creatures at once. They were special life forms formed by the blood essence sprayed by the law of Dharmaraja, who died in the battle back then. Many of them were also infected by the blood essence of other masters who died in the battle. It seemed that they were completely different from ordinary life forms. It was very wonderful. Each of these formidable beings had an unimaginable power on their bodies. They rushed over and wanted to swallow Yi Shiwen and the others. Brother Yi, these law life forms are formed by the combination of the blood sprayed by the law of Dharmaraja or other god masters and a piece of god source origin. Just when Yi Shiwen was planning to quickly shuttle over, Mu Yunshi suddenly said, You mean they have God's source origin in their bodies? Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, these life forms are not ordinary life forms. The core of their energy is God's source origin. If God's source origin is exhausted, they will also die. Therefore, these life forms often fight for God's source origin. Wars also break out between different races. Now we are only on the periphery, so what we see are law life forms that can't survive in the graveyard of the law of Dharmaraja and have no choice but to come to these peripheral areas, said Mu Yunshi. Before coming, he had also conducted a lot of investigations. At least he knew more than Yi Shiwen. Originally, Yi Shiwen had no interest in these life forms at all. However, it was different now. What he lacked the most now was God's source origin. However, this was also not something that everyone could deal with. It should be known that although these life forms had God's source origin in their bodies, their combat power could also seriously injure gods and even kill gods. It was meaningless to kill one or two God's source origin after killing for a long time. Moreover, if there were too many of them, they might be killed instead. Therefore, even if everyone wanted the God's source origin in their bodies, not many people dared to come here to hunt these life forms. At this moment, everyone started killing each other. These storm elementals joined hands to launch a storm spell. They galloped like horses, covering the sky and covering the earth, mixed with countless lightning flashes and thunder rolls. Wind and lightning were inseparable. Yun Keiji and the others clearly knew that the storm elementals had divine source in their bodies. They immediately began their slaughter, tearing apart the storm elementals. Then, they ruthlessly struck the storm elementals. In an instant, the storm elementals were torn apart, and the divine source in their bodies was immediately absorbed. "Let's go too!" Mu Yunshi shouted and charged into the storm elementals. Although she looked delicate, her cultivation level of peak immortal level was not fake. As soon as she entered, the storm elementals were completely defeated. Mu Yunshi shouted, "Mu Yunshi!" Mo Gunnis water-attributed magic surged into the sky, stirring up a boundless giant wolf that drowned and swept away everything. Yi Shiwen did not want to be outdone. He immediately launched a punch. Animal Path! Countless ferocious beasts rushed out. In the face of a group battle, the power of Animal Path was needless to say. There was no fear at all. The ferocious storm elementals could not get close to him at all, and they were all blasted away by him. The God source in their bodies fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. However, these storm elementals were relatively weak. They were even weaker than an ordinary intermediate immortal level. At most, they could only be compared to those demigods who were on the righteous path. They were far from being able to prove their God source. They only had one piece of God source in their bodies, and they were considered to be in a miserable state. However, even so, it was better than nothing. Yi Shiwen launched a punch, and more than 10 storm elementals died tragically in his hands. However, this tribe alone could provide him with hundreds of God source. It was not bad. After all, he was not alone at this time. Suddenly, just when Yi Shiwen was about to kill all the storm elementals in front of him, countless wooden spears pierced through the sky not far away. They instantly killed dozens of storm elementals in front of him. Then these wooden spears turned into huge hands and took away all the God source. "Human, I've helped you take care of these storm elementals. You don't have to thank me." At this time, Yang Shuping's proud voice was heard in Yi Shiwen's ears. Yi Shiwen's face turned black. This was clearly a provocation. They wanted to take away all the God source that belonged to him. At this time, Arcas from Hellfire also attacked. Aquamarine flames burned the sky, heading towards the remaining storm elementals in front of Yi Shiwen. They wanted to take away all of them. This time, Yi Shiwen was prepared. How could he let them succeed? He sneered and directly used Judgment Holy Claw to blast the storm elementals on the spot. He took the remaining dozens of God source into his pocket. Arcas also had a regretful look on his face. It was obvious that he hadn't been able to snatch the divine source. In particular, he hadn't been able to snatch it from Yi Shiwen. "Haha, did you see this guy's face?" It's darker than the bottom of a pot. Yang Shuping laughed loudly. That's right. We want him to not be able to snatch a single god source. We'll make him cry until he's blind, Ao Shaoqing said with a sinister smile. Although he couldn't attack Yi Shiwen for the time being, he was still very happy to see Yi Shiwen suffer. That's right. Later, we'll take turns to attack him. We'll defeat him. Yun Keiji also smiled faintly. However, these storm elementals are nothing. There's only one god source in his body. It's not interesting at all. We have to go deeper. I've already explored the path before. Only those living beings inside are valuable and meaningful. After speaking, Yun Keiji directly stepped out and turned into a rainbow. He went deeper into the graveyard of the 10,000 Dharma Kings. Are you okay? Mu Yunxi also noticed the situation on Yi Shiwen's side and flew over to ask. They're indeed a little too much. Mo Guna said. I'm fine. Yi Shiwen said coldly. They want to cause trouble for me? I'd like to see who's going to cause trouble for whom. Although he lost for a moment, he didn't really care. It was just dozens of god source, but he had to vent his anger. He took a step forward, and his body turned into a long rainbow as he chased after them. Soon, another group of real life forms appeared in front of them. These were extremely powerful, ferocious beasts. Each of them was as huge as a small mountain. They had sharp teeth, and there was a powerful thunder energy erupting from these sharp teeth. It was extremely terrifying. These powerful, ferocious beasts were actually made up of members that were comparable to peak beginner immortal level. There were even intermediate immortal level leaders. They were more than just a little stronger than the storm elementals from earlier. Junior brother, be careful. This type of ferocious beast is the Thunderfang beast. It's considered one of the more powerful ferocious beasts. They form groups, and sometimes they even go to the edge of the graveyard of the 10,000 Dharma Kings to rob gods that pass by. They're very ferocious. Mu Yunxi explained. The 10,000 Dharma Kings graveyard had not just appeared today. The powerful ferocious beasts in it had long been known by people. They cultivate thunder skills, which can suppress my cultivation level. However, it doesn't matter. I have ways to kill them, Mo Guna said indifferently. She took a step forward and rushed into the group of ferocious beasts. In an instant, she killed a few Thunderfang beasts that were attacking her. The god source in their bodies was also absorbed by Mo Guna's body. Unlike the storm elementals that only had one god source, these Thunderfang beasts had 2 or even 3 god source in their bodies. Their abilities had increased by more than a little. Although the skills that they cultivated were suppressed, the difference in their abilities was too big. Mo Guna was already at peak immortal level. It was not difficult for her to fight them. These lightning tooth beasts had clearly developed a decent level of intelligence. They also knew how to arrange themselves into formations to block Mo Guna and Mu Yunxi's sneak attack. However, they had still succeeded, and the speed of their sneak attack had indeed slowed down. At the same time, Yun Keiji and the others also attacked one after another. They wanted to kill the Thunderfang beasts in front of them. At this time, an amazing sword light crossed the sky and actually killed all the Thunderfang beasts in front of them. Hundreds of Thunderfang beasts were killed by the sword light. Only the god source in their bodies was left. It was directly grabbed by a big hand. Then, they only heard a laugh. I helped you kill all these Thunderfang beasts. You don't need to thank me. At this time, Yun Keiji and the others reacted. What the hell was going on? It turned out that Yi Shiwen had attacked. They originally wanted to join forces to defeat Yi Shiwen. Who would have thought that they would be defeated by Yi Shiwen? Who would have thought that they would be slapped in the face by Yi Shiwen? This was simply preposterous and going too far. Hundreds of Thunderfang beasts had been killed by the sword light. The area in front of them had become blank, and Yi Shiwen had grabbed at least hundreds of god source. Compared to the dozens of god source that they had snatched from Yi Shiwen earlier, it was simply a small matter. Their faces were abnormally pale, but since they had done what they had done, Yi Shiwen would naturally do the same. They could not blame Yi Shiwen at this time. They could only swallow their anger, clench their teeth, and swallow their anger. Just wait, we will definitely get back at you. Chapter 2381. They fiercely glared at Yi Shiwen. as if he was a person who had committed the most heinous crime. They didn't even think that Yi Shiwen had retaliated because they had attacked Yi Shiwen first. Wait and see. Ao Xiaoqing glared at Yi Shiwen and said. Yi Shiwen sneered. How could he not know what these people were thinking? They were 100 years too early to fight with him. Just as another group of thunder-toothed beasts appeared in front of Yun Keiji and the others, they saw another sword piercing through the sky. The terrifying sword light of the sky-splitting sword illuminated half the sky. It destroyed everything in an instant and blasted a huge hole in the void. Everything in front of them was empty. No need to thank me. At this moment, another big hand grabbed hundreds of god swords. Yi Shiwen. At this time, even Yun Keiji, who was most patient, was on the verge of exploding. His face was extremely ugly. He was constantly targeted by Yi Shiwen, and it made him lose face. Let's fight him. Ao Xiaoqing could not hold back and wanted to kill Yi Shiwen while there were so many people. Don't be anxious. He will suffer when the time comes. I will definitely make him die without a burial place. Yun Keiji said fiercely. His face was extremely ugly, but he had a plan to deal with Yi Shiwen. At the same time, Yi Shiwen's previous victory over Ao Xiaoqing was too amazing, so he did not want to take the risk. While they were hesitating, Yi Shiwen had killed hundreds of thunder-teeth beasts in front of them. Hundreds of god source stones had fallen into his hands. Yi Shiwen only felt a warm current flowing through his body after he absorbed thousands of god source in one go. Even now, he could feel that his cultivation had made some progress. He even had a feeling that he was going to break through to the late stage of the immortality realm. However, he knew that this was just an illusion. He had to endure it. Otherwise, once he crossed over, he would never be able to return. However, the laws of thunder and lightning inside the bodies of these beasts contained many ancient thunder techniques, which were even more profound than the ones he had practiced. Although they were only scattered thunder techniques, but they were still very beneficial to him. After all, he was in existence known as the 10,000 Dharma Kings. It meant that he was a heaven-defying expert that was extremely proficient in numerous great techniques and divine abilities, and he was even said to be a supreme figure that was only half a step away from becoming an imperial monarch. Even if it was just a fragment of some thunder technique, it was still very meaningful for him to comprehend, especially his devil wings, which had improved a lot. Not bad, not bad. I can kill them all and strengthen my thunder technique. Yi Shiwen sneered and directly rushed in. His broken space sword had beheaded dozens or even hundreds of thunder-toothed beasts wherever it went. Yun Keiji and the others were gnashing their teeth in anger. However, there was nothing they could do because Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. It seemed that Yi Shiwen was always faster than them. As a result, Yi Shiwen, Mu Yunshi, and Mo Gunna had killed all the thunder-toothed beasts, and Yun Keiji hadn't even killed a single one. Yun Keiji's face immediately collapsed. Just a moment ago, he had vowed that he would defeat Yi Shiwen so that Yi Shiwen wouldn't be able to kill a single beast, and he would make him lose face. However, in the end, he was defeated and he was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. His speed was always one step slower than Yi Shiwen's, and he was always one step slower than Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, he fell behind Yi Shiwen. On the other hand, Mu Yunshi and Mo Gunna, who were standing on the side, were calmer than Yi Shiwen. Therefore, they could see more clearly, and they were even more shocked. Generally speaking, even an expert at the peak of the immortal realm would not be able to kill dozens or hundreds of thunder-toothed beasts so easily. This kind of killing would take a long time. Even if they were just some living beings that were born from the natural laws and were not real gods, but their combat strength was not fake. Both of them could only deal with a few thunder-toothed beasts at most. Although it seemed that they were not killing slowly, it was not as shocking as Yi Shiwen killing dozens or hundreds of thunder-toothed beasts with one sword strike. Without such terrifying efficiency, with Yi Shiwen's strength, he would at most be able to defeat any one of Yun Keiji and the other three. It would be impossible for all four of them to defeat all of them. This kind of attack speed and true strength was a huge test, and they could not do it at all. Perhaps if they entered the Eternal Realm, it might be possible. But for now, it was absolutely impossible to do it. At this time, when they were about to die of anger, Yishuan said, "Thank you for letting me win. I will accept these God's source." Only Yishuan himself knew that his harvest this time was definitely not just these thousands of God source. Most importantly, he had continuously absorbed the natural laws of thunder in the bodies of these thunder-toothed beasts. His understanding of the natural laws of thunder had increased to a new level. The most obvious sign was that in his body, there was actually an additional ancient character, thunder. This was a Tao character that only gods had the opportunity to condense, but not all gods could condense it. This was only possible when one had an extreme understanding of a certain law. In addition to the 3 ancient characters that he already had in his body, he now had a total of 4 ancient characters. This not only signified that his comprehension of the laws of thunder and lightning had reached a whole new level, but it also meant that this was a very powerful means of attack. Most importantly, this was the first time in his life that he had comprehended a Tao character since he had ascended to become a god. For ordinary gods, perhaps they could only condense a certain type of martial arts that they had cultivated throughout their lives. For Yishuan, the natural laws of thunder was only one of the directions in which he cultivated. When Yun Keiji and the others heard Yishuan's words, they were simply about to spit out blood. They had seen bullies, but they had never seen such a bully. They had originally planned to anger Yishuan to death, but they did not expect that one day they would be angered by Yishuan like this. But they could not act up. What they did not know was that Yishuan was waiting for them to act up. He did not intend to cooperate with them in the first place. Without 100,000 divine source, he would not give it up no matter what, let alone share it with these guys. If they dared to attack him, he would immediately fall out with them and show no mercy. But what made him feel pity was that the other party seemed to have some kind of plan. No matter how much he provoked them, they would not fall for it. While he felt pity, he was also somewhat vigilant. The other party did not look like a magnanimous person, but he did not show any signs. There must be some kind of conspiracy waiting for him. He had to be more careful. But at this time, he had already completely opened the eye of salvation. Even if there was a trap, it could not escape his eyes. It's okay, it's just some thunder-toothed beasts. Let's continue inside. The law beasts inside are even stronger, and there are also more divine source. This is just a small matter, Yun Keiji said while suppressing his anger. He took the lead and turned into a long rainbow, flying out. He did not want to see Yishuan again, not even for a second. His figure flew further and further in the void. Yishuan and the others followed one after another. Along the way, they encountered several batches of law beasts, but just like before, they were all robbed by Yishuan. These law beasts were even more tyrannical, and there were even advanced stage immortal level beasts. However, in Yishuan's eyes, they were nothing at all. Similarly, he killed all of them with one slash of his sword. Along the way, Yishuan plundered more than 40,000 divine source. Including the thousands of divine source from before, Yishuan had collected more than 50,000 divine source during the process of approaching the Dharma King's tomb. These divine source were all absorbed into Yishuan's body, and the rules on these law beasts were also devoured by Yishuan. He was constantly deducing and continuously deepening Yishuan's cultivation base. Although only a short half a day had passed, Yishuan's cultivation base was more than twice as strong as when he had first arrived. This was extremely difficult because he did not choose to break through to advanced stage immortal level. He was merely at peak stage immortal level, and there was no actual change in his cultivation base, but his combat power and comprehension and control of the rules made him more than twice as strong. This was something that countless people could not imagine even in their dreams. But Yishuan had done it with the help of the mysterious space. Everyone followed Yun Keiji and saw that the endless storm power in the void formed a cloud-like energy that was visible to the naked eye. There was a group of storm beasts hidden in this storm power. Each of these beasts had a wingspan of tens of meters. They were very huge, and their bodies were not made of flesh and blood. Instead, they were made of storm energy, and they were very powerful. These beasts were endless, and they were different from the hundreds or thousands of law beasts that could form a group. These storm beasts were very terrifying. At a glance, There were probably tens of thousands of them, or even more. If an ordinary god saw such a lineup, their legs would probably turn into jelly. They might even turn around and run away, not daring to approach. Even Yun-Keiji was a little nervous. However, although he was a little solemn, he did not slow down at all, and he led everyone over. Everyone be careful. These beasts are a type of beast called the wild storm eagle. They're born from the wind rule, and they're very powerful. Even if it's us, if we're not careful, we might be trapped and die tragically. Yun-Keiji said. He reminded everyone, but he did not slow down. Meanwhile, Yishiwen also became solemn. These wild storm eagles were different from the law beasts earlier. The weakest of them was comparable to advanced stage immortal level. It seemed like there was a peak stage immortal level leader among them, and it just depended on where it was. Chapter 2382. In this tribe, there was probably a powerful leader who was comparable to a peak immortal level. Even with Yi Shiwen's ability, he was a little afraid of the densely packed violent storm eagles. There were too many of them, and it was completely different from before. Even a peak immortal level powerhouse could be killed by them. This tribe was incomparably powerful. None of the tribes that he had encountered before could be compared to this tribe. Yi Shiwen could even see that on the other side, some of the weaker tribes were even devoured by this tribe. They were killed and their god source was devoured. In this place, everything was so cruel. The weak were prey to the strong. Only the strongest could survive here. As they needed god source to provide energy, these powerful beasts were killing each other, not for anything else but to survive. Among them, Yishiwen saw countless fractured spaces and some subspaces. They were all living in them, and they were considered the most terrifying tribe. This was quite close to the center of the Dharma King's tomb. Naturally, it looked very dangerous. Even with Yishiwen and the others' cultivation and strength, they dared not rush in when faced with such a lineup. If these beasts could leave the Dharma King's tomb, they could easily destroy a relatively weak immortal inheritance. There were too many of them. Yun-Keiji glanced at Yishiwen, and a sneer appeared on his face. He had deliberately brought Yishiwen here to see what other tricks Yishiwen had up his sleeve. Even he felt his scalp tingle when he saw so many violent storm eagles, let alone Yishiwen. Kaka, there's another god from the outside world. I'm going to devour them, devour their flesh and blood, deprive them of their rules, and plunder their god source. Roar, devour, devour. I want to enter their divine shells. I want to escape this boundless imprisonment. For a moment, countless violent storm eagles were roaring angrily. They looked at Yishiwen and the others with incomparably fierce eyes. Countless bloody thoughts swept over. They went straight into everyone's brains, trying to turn them into idiots. Everyone be careful. Don't let them kill you. Yun-Keiji roared. Waves of treasure light erupted from his body, protecting himself. At this time, Yishiwen finally understood why the god who came to inquire about the news had turned into a madman in the end. It was really dangerous here. However, Yishiwen remained motionless. It was as if he hadn't heard anything. Yun-Keiji and the others couldn't help but feel ecstatic when they saw this scene. They thought that Yishiwen was being careless. He thought that it wouldn't matter if he was hit by this kind of mental attack. He thought that he would certainly suffer a big loss. He might even die. However, a shocking scene happened. Yishiwen didn't move at all. He didn't even mobilize any divine power. These thoughts penetrated into his body, but it didn't affect him at all. Yishiwen's complexion remained the same, as if he hadn't felt anything at all. However, they didn't know that the enlightening mind ancient tree was protecting his mind at all times. So, it was simply impossible for these thoughts to attack his mind. It didn't matter to him at all. It wouldn't affect him at all. Seeing that Yishiwen wasn't affected at all, Yun-Keiji had no choice but to give up the idea of watching a joke. He only said coldly, although we can't deal with all the violent storm eagles, these lowly beasts actually dared to target us. They're simply courting death. These lowly beasts actually dared to covet our god's shell. They're really courting death. He attacked in an instant. The clouds that filled the sky spread out and instantly formed a range of dozens of miles. It swept out and actually swept away dozens of violent storm eagles in an instant. Those god source were absorbed by him in an instant. Yishuan specially observed for a while. This was the first time that Yunkeji had used his full strength. His ability was indeed more tyrannical than Ao Xiaoqing's. Such ability could be considered outstanding among peak immortal levels. It was no wonder that he was so confident and so certain. At this time, the others also began to fight one after another. They fought and retreated at the same time. They didn't think of rushing in. It wouldn't matter if it was a small tribe, but such a large tribe with cultivation that was comparable to a late-stage immortal level was enough to make them die here. However, Yishuan was different. He rushed in with the sky-splitting sword in his hand. These violent storm eagles had the rule of storm on them. Previously, the number of storm elements was too small, so he couldn't really condense the word wind. He wanted to use these violent storm eagles to condense the word wind. Although he didn't cultivate the martial arts of wind and thunder, he had an understanding of the rule of wind and thunder that ordinary people couldn't achieve because he had cultivated the tempest wings. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to condense the word thunder so smoothly. He could feel that the word wind was about to be condensed and had reached a critical juncture. This was very important to him. As long as he condensed the word wind, his cultivation would advance further. By then, no matter what tricks they had up their sleeves, it would be meaningless to him. There was a loud roar. Yishuan's sword light stretched for dozens of miles and killed all the violent storm eagles within the range of dozens of miles. Their god source turned into a boundless energy frenzy and surged into his body. At the same time, he also absorbed the incomplete wind attribute rule into his body and used the mysterious space to deduce it crazily. A simple and unadorned word wind that almost nobody could recognize was slowly forming in his body. He couldn't care less anymore and rushed in directly. Now, every time Yishuan killed a violent storm eagle, he would strip all the wind attribute rule in it and refine it. He would also devour the god source in it. Although these violent storm eagles were only comparable to advanced stage immortal level and were not real gods, the number of the rule in their bodies still gave Yishuan a great deal of enlightenment. These were powerful monsters that were condensed purely from the wind attribute rule. They didn't have a real body of flesh and blood. Even their bodies were condensed from the rule. However, Yishuan had originally planned to accumulate God Source in preparation for advancing to advanced stage immortal level. He had to give up now because deducing the storm rule would require a huge amount of God Source. He had completely digested all of them. There was no God Source left at all. Therefore, although he was crazily killing these violent storm eagles and devouring the God Source, most of them were actually devoured by the mysterious space. The more he killed, the deeper he went, but he found that more and more of these ominous beasts were coming towards him. In fact, they almost blotted out the sky and seemed endless. No matter how much he killed, he simply couldn't kill all of them. Soon, he was drowned in these violent storm eagles. Oh no, Yishuan went too deep into the violent storm eagles. Emogana suddenly reacted and said. Mu Yunshi also reacted, but at that moment, they could no longer see Yishuan's figure. He was completely drowned in the violent storm eagles. What should we do? These violent storm eagles are really ferocious. We can't rush in to save him even if we want to. He's too careless. Mu Yunshi said worriedly. However, there was nothing she could do at that moment. If she rushed in, she would soon be devoured by the violent storm eagles. Not only were these violent storm eagles powerful, but there were also many of them. Even a peak, immortal level expert would not be able to withstand such a mess. Ah, that's right. It's just as you planned. He really fell into the violent storm eagles. Ao Xiaoqing laughed, as if he had finally gotten his revenge. Yishuan had given him too much pressure earlier. Now that Yishuan had fallen into the violent storm eagles, Ao Xiaoqing thought that Yishuan would definitely not have a chance to escape. He still thinks that he's proud of himself. In fact, I've been here for a long time. I already knew about these violent storm eagles, so I released something on his body. It's what the violent storm eagles like the most. However, most people can't feel it, So he doesn't know. As long as he comes into contact with these violent storm eagles, even if he doesn't go deep, he'll soon be devoured by these violent storm eagles. Yun Keiji said proudly. He had tolerated Yi Shiwen in every possible way. Now he had finally gotten the results. Yi Shiwen was finally going to die. Moreover, he's so daring. He thinks that his strength is outstanding. He actually dared to rush into these crazy violent storm eagles. Moreover, he would die silently. No one would know about it at all. That's right. He's just a newbie and he dares to fight with us. He's really courting death. Yang Shuping could not help but sneer. Yunshi, did you see that? They look so proud. I'm afraid that this has something to do with them. Emogena whispered. What else can we do? He has already rushed in. Are we going to follow him? Mu Yunshi said anxiously. There's nothing we can do. It's his fault for rushing in. He can only pray for himself. There are so many violent storm eagles. We can't kill them all, and we can't save him. Emogena said. Moreover, I'm afraid that there's a great leader who's comparable to a peak immortal level in there. By then, let alone him, we'll have to die too. Just when the people outside had their own thoughts about Yi Shiwen himself did not care at all. You're still too young to use such a trick to deal with me. He had already noticed Yun Keiji's little trick, but he did not expose it because he still needed these violent storm eagles to condense the Tao rune of wind. Naturally, the more the better. However, the killing intent in his heart was even stronger. The sky breaker sword in his hand danced around his body, forming a sword screen that protected him. Wherever it passed, it would kill everything. Chapter 2383. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen's sword light was extremely sharp as it swept across the sky. Wherever it passed, the violent storm eagles could not even withstand a single blow and were all killed. However, the violent storm eagles were not afraid of death at all. There was something on Yi Shiwen that attracted them, and they were determined to devour him. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about it. He had the Phoenix regeneration technique to protect his body. He was always recovering to his peak state. There was no such thing as chi exhaustion. Moreover, it was not so easy for these storm eagles to hurt him. As he killed more and more violent storm eagles, Yi Shiwen's understanding of the wind attribute rule continued to improve. Gradually, the word wind was forming in his body, and it was getting clearer and clearer. No, I'm just a little bit away from condensing the word wind. I have to kill a peak immortal level violent storm eagle. Yi Shiwen killed along the way, but he did not see any violent storm eagles that were comparable to peak immortal level. But right now, he really needed this level of wild storm eagles to complete the final transformation from quantitative to qualitative. I can't be entangled by these ordinary violent storm eagles anymore. I have to go deeper. Yi Shiwen immediately erased the skill that Yun Keiji had left on his body. Suddenly, the violent storm eagles that were initially crazy became much quieter. They no longer rushed towards him, and many of them began to rush towards Yun Keiji and the rest who were at the periphery. Although there were still a lot of wild storm eagles, it was much better than before, allowing him to move freely among them. This place had been transformed by these violent storm eagles into a boundless world of wind elements. It was indeed a huge suppression for Yun Keiji and the others. However, it wasn't the case for Yi Shiwen. His understanding of the law of wind was far superior to these violent storm eagles, so he could naturally pass through this place without any hindrance. As he went deeper, he gradually killed more and more violent storm eagles, and the word wind in his body gradually formed. He saw a tempest eagle that was as powerful as a peak stage immortal level. At this moment, outside, Yun Keiji and the others were retreating as they fought. Yun Keiji tore apart a wild storm eagle and devoured its god source. Then he flew to Mu Yunshi's side and said, Yunshi, although your junior brother's strength isn't bad, he's a little too rash. He actually rushed into the midst of these wild storm eagles. You should know that even I don't have the confidence to deal with these wild storm eagles. If he rushed in like that, I'm afraid he's already dead. Probably not. He won't die so easily. Mu Yunshi said with a frown. Although rushing into the wild storm eagles could be said to be very dangerous, but they didn't have any specific information. Who knew whether Yi Shiwen was alive or dead? More importantly, even if she didn't believe in Yi Shiwen's strength, she believed that Yi Shiwen was still sane. It was impossible for him to rush into the wild storm eagles when she couldn't deal with it. Since he had rushed in without any hesitation, it was obvious that he had something to rely on. However, she wasn't very clear about what that something was. Yun Keiji saw that Mu Yunshi wasn't moved at all, so he couldn't help but say, "No matter what, we can't stay here. You should know that we don't have much time. If the 10,000 spell roulette is obtained by someone else in the end, wouldn't our trip be in vain?" Mu Yunshi frowned slightly and was instantly enraged. Yun Keiji clearly meant to leave Yi Shiwen behind, and this was something she couldn't accept. "That's right, Yunshi. This isn't something we can control. He's really too rash." Yang Shuping said, "There's nothing we can do. Although we've lost a god, we still have to protect ourselves, right?" Ao Xiaoqing couldn't help but reveal a proud smile on his face. He originally thought that it would take some effort to get rid of Yi Shiwen. Who knew that Yi Shiwen would be so stupid as to rush in on his own, saving him a lot of trouble. At that time, with the mark left on his body by Yun Keiji, there would only be one outcome for him, and that was to be besieged to death by these violent storm eagles. "Senior sister, promise them that you don't need to worry about me first. I'm very well now, and they're still far from being able to kill me." Mu Yunshi was about to rebuke him angrily when she suddenly received Yi Shiwen's secret sound transmission. She confirmed that she hadn't misheard it. It was actually Yi Shiwen's secret sound transmission. She couldn't imagine how powerful Yi Shiwen was to be able to transmit his secret sound transmission even when the violent storm eagles had disrupted all the laws. Or, what kind of means did he have? What kind of backing did he have that gave him the guts to do this? Although she had many doubts in her heart, she was relieved that Yi Shiwen wasn't dead and was very well. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to explain herself if her master blamed her. Losing such a talented genius of the Hidden Valley was really a big sin. Well, if that's the case, then let's hurry over first. I really can't do anything about his matter. Mu Yunshi opened her mouth and said. Emogana looked at Mu Yunshi and was somewhat stunned. She didn't expect Mu Yunshi to say such words. She was very clear that Mu Yunshi's attitude was very firm just now. How could she change her attitude in such a short time? Could it be? He looked at the endless army of violent storm eagles, but ultimately didn't say anything. Yun Keiji and the others were overjoyed when they saw that Mu Yunshi had finally relented. Sure enough, Mu Yunshi was still sensible. It was absolutely impossible for her to fight them to the death just for Yi Shiwen. Moreover, this was the case. How could this junior brother, who had come from nowhere, be mentioned in the same breath as their friendship? As for that Yi Shiwen, he would die among the violent storm eagles. The eyes of Yun Keiji and the others revealed a somewhat sinister look. This also fell into Mu Yunshi's eyes. She couldn't help but sneer in her heart. How could these people know that junior brother Yi was not only fine, but on the contrary, he was living very well? However, her heart was also slightly cold. These people were naturally cold-blooded. They were really not good candidates to cooperate with. After this time, there would be no more dealings with them. Otherwise, she wouldn't even know when she would be sold. If that's the case, then let's go quickly. If we don't leave now, the leader of the violent storm eagles will be alarmed. When that happens, we won't be able to escape, no matter what. Yun Keiji explained. Everyone agreed one after another. Mu Yunshi took a deep look at the endless flock of violent storm eagles, then also stepped on the escape light and left. At that moment, Yi Shiwen had also killed his way into the center of the violent storm eagles. His entire body seemed to have turned into wind elements. The frequency and amplitude of the vibrations were almost exactly the same as the violent storm eagles. Although he was in human form, the violent storm eagles that were slightly further away did not see him at all, allowing him to kill his way in easily. After entering, Yi Shiwen discovered that these wild storm eagles were different from the other law life forms. They had already formed a very large tribe, and their management was simple and orderly. It was completely different from the frenzied way they appeared to be on the outside. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen saw many space fragments among the flock of violent storm eagles. The space fragments were slowly filled with storm elements, and new violent storm eagles were being bred. Unlike the ordinary birth process of gods, which was extremely difficult, these rule life forms could be born as long as the god source was combined with the rule. There was a space fragment in front of him, and a powerful peak, immortal-level violent storm eagle was guarding the space fragment. This place was very important to the violent storm eagle tribe as it represented the future of the violent storm eagle tribe. As long as this place was not lost, there would be an endless supply of violent storm eagles. More importantly, after Yi Shiwen opened the Eye of Redemption, he realized that there was a lot of god source in the space fragment. These were all prepared for the newly born violent storm eagles. In just one of the spatial fragments, there were a lot of god source. The heavens are on my side. As long as I collect all the god source in these space fragments, do I have to worry about not having enough god source to break through? Yi Shiwen was ecstatic in his heart. This was the accumulation of the wild storm eagles for tens of thousands of years. So, they were naturally very rich. Most of it had been consumed by them. However, they were still constantly plundering the divine source of other tribes. So, they still had a lot of surplus. If he could really succeed, then the god source he needed to break through to advanced immortal level would be sufficient. However, he had to be careful. If he attracted all the violent storm eagles, even a true imperishable level expert would die there. He had to be careful. However, he just had to be a little careful. With his strength, he basically couldn't find many opponents in the immortal realm. He was confident that even if he wasn't the first person under the undead realm, he was actually not far from it. Get lost! Yi Shiwen swung his sword, and in an instant, the surrounding violent storm eagles were gone, creating a huge gap between them. He immediately activated the demon's wings, and his entire body turned into a stream of light, charging directly into the space fragment nearby. The closer he was to the space fragment, the more intense the rule of storm was. After being modified by the violent storm eagle tribe for countless years, it was not a place that other life forms could survive. However, it was a pity that Yi Shiwen's understanding of the rule of storm had reached an extremely high level. In such an environment, he was like a fish in water. In an instant, he arrived in front of the powerful peak, immortal-level violent storm eagle. Chapter 2384. It was a very powerful violent storm eagle. Unlike the other violent storm eagles, its entire body was a noble purplish gold color. The feathers on its body were glowing with a type of rule talisman. This was a very powerful leader of the violent storm eagles. Nobody knew how many powerful opponents it had slaughtered to grow to this stage. However, to Yi Shiwen, it was not so powerful that he could not deal with it. It was much weaker than Ao Shaoqing. Although Ao Shaoqing was no match for Yi Shiwen and was beaten up badly, it did not mean that Ao Shaoqing was weak. On the contrary, it meant that Yi Shiwen was too powerful. If it had been someone else, Ao Shaoqing would not have been so embarrassed even if he was no match for Yi Shiwen. It was difficult to find an opponent for Yi Shiwen among the immortal levels. Almost as soon as Yi Shiwen appeared, the powerful leader of the violent storm eagle reacted immediately. It let out a loud roar that shook the world. The powerful ability that was comparable to peak immortal level erupted all of a sudden, and the space was immediately glassy. The purple leader of the violent storm eagle's claws cut through the sky and grabbed at Yi Shiwen. Whoosh! The void shook violently all of a sudden, just like the surface of the water fluctuating violently. Whoosh! The broken space sword in Yi Shiwen's hand erupted with an astonishing ray of light. That huge claw was split open by Yi Shiwen's sword and exploded. It seemed as if a rain of blood had fallen. Roar! The violent storm eagle leader shrieked and retreated. Its claw was as hard as metal, but it was destroyed by Yi Shiwen's sword on the spot. It was a huge shock to it. It wanted to escape and summon more companions to fight Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen would not give it the chance. The The sword gleam flickered in the sky, and it suddenly slashed down, killing the violent storm eagle leader. The body of the powerful purple storm wild eagle turned into a mass of flesh and blood on the spot. Then it scattered into clumps of principles. Yi Xuan grabbed it with his palm and absorbed it into his body. The hundreds of divine sources in his body were also swallowed by Yi Xuan. At that moment, countless wind attribute rules in Yi Xuan's body were undergoing a shocking transformation. They were condensing into a simple ancient character at a shocking speed. The wind. The principles inside the body of this wild storm eagle's leader were obviously a level higher than the principles inside the body of an ordinary wild storm eagle. In an instant, Yi Xuan's body began to undergo a qualitative change. It pushed his wind elemental laws to an even higher level. Finally, inside his body, the wind character finally took shape and corresponded with the thunder character from a distance. It was as if two wings had formed inside his body. Boom! A violent force wrapped in the power of the storm rushed out of Yi Xuan's body and swept in all directions. The storm eagles that rushed over were bombarded to death in an instant. Originally, this place had been created by the storm eagles to become their home field, and every place was filled with the law of storm. However, everything was completely different after Yi Xuan comprehended the essence of the word wind. It was tantamount to all kinds of strange winds in the world being under his control. This place had also become his home field, which was advantageous to him. He was like a fish in water, and he could unleash 100% of his power. He could even unleash more than 100% of his power. After he killed these wild storm eagles, Yi Xuan quickly rushed into the space fragment and killed all the wild storm eagles that had just been born and had yet to gain consciousness. He plundered all the god source in the entire space fragment. He actually obtained tens of thousands of god source, which was much faster than killing the wild storm eagles outside. Yi Xuan calculated for a while. If the other space fragments outside had tens of thousands of divine roots, then it would be more than enough to gather 500,000 divine roots. By then, regardless of whether he could succeed or not, he would be able to advance to the late stage of the eternal life realm. His combat power would be comparable to the eternal realm. It was almost a done deal. In that case, regardless of whether he succeeded or failed, he would not have come in vain this time. Yi Xuan suddenly realized that a sharp claw had grabbed down at him as soon as he came out of this space fragment. The claw bombarded him, and it was aimed directly at Yi Xuan's head. Its speed was extremely fast, and it was even more troublesome than the wild storm eagle earlier. However, Yi Xuan's ability was completely different from before. After condensing the word wind, he was simply a storm manipulator, and his ability was extremely powerful. As soon as he raised his hand, the boundless wind and waves formed a huge hand. It moved like a shadow and directly grabbed the huge claw, directly grabbing the huge figure from the void. Only then did Yi Xuan realize that it was the leader of a powerful wild storm eagle. The commotion just now must have alarmed it, and it immediately rushed over. There was no difference. There was only a clang sound, and a shocking sword aura appeared in Yi Xuan's hand. It covered the power of the storm, and it directly slashed at the leader of the wild storm eagle. Bang! The powerful leader of the wild storm eagle was instantly slashed into pieces by Yi Xuan. At that moment, countless wild storm eagles in the sky began to riot all of a sudden. They were all shocked that two powerful wild storm eagle leaders had been killed, especially some of the more powerful wild storm eagles. Their intelligence was not bad, and it was comparable to that of a human's. At that moment, they suddenly woke up from their deep sleep. These wild storm eagle leaders began to rush to Yi Xuan's location from all directions. Yi Xuan took a big stride and turned into a stream of light, rushing into another space fragment. This space fragment was not guarded by the leader of the wild storm eagle as it had been killed by Yi Xuan earlier. After entering, Yi Xuan looted wantonly again, and all the god sources were swept clean, and he swallowed them into his body. At that moment, the mysterious space in Yi Xuan's body continued to operate, and it continuously digested the god sources. It began to prepare to break through to advanced immortal level. It would take some time, but Yi Shiwen could already start now. Initially, he was worried that he would not be able to break through to advanced immortal level, so he did not look like he was going to break through to advanced immortal level. However, now that he had the god sources contributed by the wild storm eagles, he naturally did not lack anything, and he immediately began to break through. Damn you, human! How dare you kill our people? These violent storm eagles had already gone crazy. Their eyes were blood red as they rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Go! We must kill him and eat his flesh. The leader of a powerful wild storm eagle roared. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 powerful wild storm eagle leaders had appeared unknowingly. These leaders were obviously one size bigger than the ordinary wild storm eagles, and their abilities were more tyrannical. They were extremely terrifying. These wild storm eagle leaders had a higher cultivation level, and they were more intelligent. They did not just rely on brute force to fight, but they began to learn from the cultivators outside and began to cultivate. They wanted to break away from their fate of relying on the source of God. Once the source of God was exhausted, they would die a horrible death. They could not be compared to the experts outside who had proven their Tao and were equally powerful but could live forever. In an instant, more than 10 powerful wild storm eagle leaders had already formed a large formation. They could tell that Yi Shiwen's ability was terrifying from the fact that he had killed 2 wild storm eagle leaders with ease. They might not be able to fight Yi Shiwen one-on-one, so they might as well attack together. Storm giants? They roared one after another, and the endless power of the storm began to condense. It swept out and formed a storm wave. In the storm wave, a huge figure appeared out of thin air. It was the storm giant that they had summoned. It was simply the embodiment of the destructive power of the storm, the god of destruction from hell. Roar! The storm giant let out a deafening roar, causing the void to collapse. A boundless force spread out in all directions. Swoosh! At that moment, the storm giant suddenly attacked Yi Shiwen. As it punched, the endless power of the storm froze everything. It was as if the sky and earth had collapsed in an instant. What a powerful formation. You animals definitely can't think of such an exquisite formation. I'm afraid it has something to do with the Dharma King. I'm afraid an ordinary peak immortal level powerhouse would not be able to withstand it and would die tragically. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. The leader of the Storm Eagles did have some tricks up his sleeves. Such a formation could condense all of their strength into a storm giant. It was equivalent to clenching 5 fingers into a fist and punching people. The power was more than just a little bit stronger. It should be a trick left behind by the Dharma King. To put it bluntly, the Storm Eagles were just the embodiment of the Dharma King's will. But I'm not someone that those people can compare to. A brilliant light suddenly flashed in Yi Shiwen's eyes. Then, an inexhaustible power emerged from his body and merged with it. The 3 martial arts embodiments merged with his body in an instant, and his power climbed to its peak in an instant. The terrifying waves surged into the sky, dispersing the clouds in the sky. The storm eagles above his head that could not dodge in time were evaporated in an instant. Such power almost surpassed the limit of peak immortal level. He did not even use half of his power when he fought with Ao Shaoqing. This was Yi Shiwen's hidden power. Now that Mu Yunxi and the rest were not around, he could use his full power without worrying about others finding out. At that moment, the storm giant's fist had already blasted in front of him. Bang! There was a loud noise, and the fist stopped in midair as if there was an extra wall in front of Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2385. The fist that was the size of a huge millstone landed a meter in front of Yi Shiwen. It was as if it was blocked by a wall and could not move forward anymore. However, if one were to look closely, they would realize that the arm of the storm giant had been entangled with endless storm chains. The talisman chains formed by the rule of storm had completely entangled its arm. It was fighting against the rule, so it was naturally impossible for it to move. They could only see the terrifying power entangling its arm. Explode! Yi Shiwen shouted, and the chain began to tighten rapidly. The arm of the storm giant shattered on the spot and turned into energy all over the sky. It actually exploded on the spot. How is this possible? Even the leader of the Storm Eagles was completely shocked. He was almost scared to death and could not believe it. One must know that the Storm Giant was a formation that had completely condensed everyone's power. It was equivalent to the power of more than 10 peak immortal-level powerhouses in one go. How terrifying was that? In their opinion, even a true Eternal Stage powerhouse would have to temporarily avoid the brunt of the attack. However, Yishuan had completely withstood it all at once. What kind of terrifying power was this? What kind of power was this? They instantly widened their eyes in an instant. At that moment, they clearly felt that in the sky, the storm energy that was originally like a fish in the water seemed to have suddenly gone out of their control. It was out of their control as if it had gone off target. At the same time, they felt that even breathing had become difficult, as if someone was controlling the flow of the storm. Bursts of light erupted from their bodies, wanting to fight against that control. They looked at Yi Shiwen one after another. At that moment, only Yi Shiwen was their enemy. Therefore, only Yi Shiwen could cause such a situation. They could not believe it at all. They were the elves of the storm, the beloved children of the storm. They were the strong elves of the strong wind that inherited the rule of the wind attribute. They had never encountered such a situation before. They had always been the ones who made others helpless and could not even breathe. However, no one could make them feel so deeply how difficult it was to control the power of the storm. How did he do it? The leader of the Wild Storm Eagles looked at this scene in disbelief. They weren't stupid, so they couldn't imagine that even gods who majored in one type of rule in the outside world wouldn't have much of an advantage when facing wind elves like them. At most, they could only fight to a draw, let alone gain complete control. Furthermore, he was able to suppress more than a dozen powerful beings on his side. That's right, all of this was done by Yishuan. In his body, the wind character was constantly emitting bursts of energy rays. This ancient character not only represented that his understanding of the wind attribute law had reached an unprecedented level, but it was also a kind of magical power and means. With the help of the word wind, this place immediately turned from the home ground of the storm Berserk Eagle to his home ground. Next, I will show you my true strength. Yishuan laughed and said. The strength that he had reserved for so many days completely broke out and didn't stop in the slightest. Human Dao Fist. He blasted out a huge human Dao world with a punch. It quickly condensed in his hand and formed a huge world on the spot, suppressing the huge storm giant. The storm giant continued to struggle and resist, wanting to resist, but there was no way. This kind of life form condensed from the pure power of the law would become abnormally fragile when the law was not looking after it. It was much more fragile than other life forms. Bang! Yishuan blasted half of the storm giant's head with a punch. The storm giant continued to roar, but it couldn't do anything. Yishuan's next wave of attack followed like a shadow, directly bombarding it. Sky-flipping seal, a huge seal, which seemed to be able to reverse the world, blasted the body of the storm giant with that kind of terrifying power. Bang! The storm giant was smashed away. God knew how many wild storm eagles were smashed to death by its huge body, and the world shook. The leaders of the wild storm eagles who had arranged the formation were also sent flying at this time. They weren't a match for the storm giant at all, and the entire body condensed from the law showed signs of collapsing. How is this possible? How can the gods outside be so powerful? They roared in disbelief. Their tribe had been established for countless years. In these countless years, there were many people who wanted to visit the tomb of the Dharma King, so they had also seen many. Although they had never gone out, they knew a lot from the memories of the slain gods. They also had a very good understanding of the outside world, but they had never heard of anyone who could be so strong. He was actually not even in the eternal realm. Such a person was probably an unprecedented powerhouse in the outside world. At this time, they already had the intention to retreat. They could already feel Yi Shiwen's tyrannical fighting strength, and they were completely stunned. They commanded the wild storm eagles to chase after Yi Shiwen, wanting to fight for a way out for them. "These pieces of trash want to stop me," Yi Shiwen sneered, and the sky-splitting sword in his hand suddenly flew out, continuously spitting out sword light in midair, nailing the rushing wild storm eagles in the air on the spot, and they couldn't get close to him at all. Yi Shiwen himself also rushed over, his hands turned into the sky-flipping seal, and blasted towards the storm giant. Rumble! Although the 10,000 method roulette was good, it was still a problem whether he could get it. Moreover, no matter how good it was not as good as the Tianyuan mirror. This was his life weapon, and the more powerful the Tianyuan mirror was, the more it could improve his strength. Yi Shiwen originally planned to push his cultivation to the advanced immortal level before he went, but he calculated the time, and he was afraid that everyone had already arrived. He was already late, and if he waited until his cultivation reached the advanced immortal level before he went, it would be too late. However, he was not in a hurry, and all of these divine sources were stored in his body. He could immediately feel that countless energy was circulating in his body, and after he had enough energy, the mysterious space was also operating in full force. With 650,000 divine source, it was enough for him to comprehend and break through at the same time. By then, once he broke through, he would be comparable to the super masters in the early stage of the imperishable level, and he would not have to climb up from the bottom first. As long as he comprehended it, it would be a piece of cake. After these arrangements were made, Yi Shiwen finally rushed out of the nest of these violent storm eagles after he was done with his cultivation. At this time, these violent storm eagles were completely in a mess. Since the leader of the violent storm eagles had died in Yi Shiwen's hands, they were now in a state of chaos, like a group of dragons without a leader. Compared to when he had rushed in, it was many times easier. He easily broke out of the violent storm eagle's nest, and his body turned into a graceful swan, sweeping across the sky and rushing towards the deepest part of the Dharma King's tomb. Chapter 2386. Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast, especially after condensing the word wind and thunder. His speed had undergone a qualitative transformation. Compared to before, he was much faster. Although it took him a lot of time, he was still able to catch up with Mu Yunxi by following the tracks he left behind. After flying for a day and a night, he finally caught up with Mu Yunxi and the others. When Yi Shiwen was flying, his movements were not small, so he quickly attracted their attention. "Yi Shiwen, it's you? You're not dead yet, huh?" Yun Keiji laughed and said. "Yi Shiwen, run?" At this time, Mu Yunxi directly said with an anxious expression. Emogana also had an anxious look on her face. Yi Shiwen felt a little strange. How did things turn out like this? "Yi Shiwen, today is the day you die. If not for you, we would not have ended up like this. Today, I will drag you down with me." Yun Keiji said with a distorted expression. "Kill him. I must kill him." Yang Shuping kept roaring, as if he was suppressing his anger and was about to explode in the air. "Yi Shiwen, no one in the world can save you." Ao Shaoqing's face was also full of anger. "Mu Yunxi, Mo gonna, do you want to die? Do you still want to help him?" Aksu opened his green mouth and spat out flames from hell. At this time, Mu Yunxi and Mo Gunna were also at a loss, not knowing what to do. "Senior sister, what the hell is going on?" Yi Shiwen asked. Mu Yunxi said, "Junior brother, not long after we left, our group encountered the withered devil ancestor. That old bastard is cruel and bloodthirsty. He ambushed us and wiped us out in an instant. We were captured by him, and now he has poisoned our bodies. This kind of poison is very difficult to deal with. Not only do we have to listen to him, but most importantly, we can't go more than 100,000 miles away from him. Otherwise, he will explode on the spot. There is no cure." Yun Keiji said with a pale face. "If not for you, I would not have chosen this path, and would not have met that old guy." Thinking that he had been poisoned and had become someone else's puppet, he was so depressed that he wanted to die. And all of this was caused by Yi Shiwen. Although he wanted to harm Yi Shiwen, so he led the way to this road, he naturally wouldn't feel that he was in the wrong. All of this was caused by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's face was dignified. Although he had never heard of the name of the withered demon ancestor, these were the peak masters of the immortal realm. Unless they encountered an existence like Yi Shiwen, who was 1 in 10,000, otherwise, ordinary masters of the peak of the immortal realm would also run away when they encountered them. Then there was only one possibility, an imperishable realm expert. If this was really the case, then things would become troublesome. According to what Mu Yunshi had said, he couldn't be more than 100,000 miles away from the withered demon ancestor. In other words, the withered demon ancestor should be within 100,000 miles of them. For mortals, 100,000 miles was like a natural mode. However, for gods, it was just a matter of a thought. Although it was not as easy to teleport here as it was outside, with the flying speed of an imperishable realm expert, it would not take long. Yun Keiji and the others' faces were abnormally ugly, and they all stared at Yi Shiwen. Does this withered demon ancestor not know your identity? Yi Shiwen looked at Mu Yunshi and said, although these people were only at the peak of a mortal level, none of them were ordinary people. As far as he knew, Mu Yunshi was from the Hidden Valley, which was a sect that was crowned as a king. How powerful was it? Ao Shaoqing was from the Dragon Island, which was a veteran organization. In this world, who dared to ignore the anger of the Dragon Island. Not only did he kill them, but he also controlled them and turned them into puppets. Once the various forces found out about this, it would not be as simple as just being furious. He was afraid that they would chase him to the ends of the earth. Mu Yunshi smiled bitterly and said, this withered demon ancestor is a traitor of the demon race. In the past tens of thousands of years, he has done countless things that angered the heavens and people. The major forces have long hated him to the core, so he doesn't care. Yi Shiwen could not help but be stunned. He did not expect this withered demon ancestor to have such an identity. If this was the case, there was indeed no scruples in doing things. If it were him, he would not have any scruples either. All these years, withered demon ancestor has been wandering in the depths of the god burial star ocean. Even the major forces have not found any traces of him. We also did not expect that we would be ambushed by him here. Otherwise, even if we were no match for him, we would not have fallen to the point of being annihilated. Mu Yunshi said. His eyes were filled with despair. Being controlled by someone, their future was simply too horrible to look at. Moreover, this kind of parasite will only worsen. We can still move freely now, but in a few more years, I'm afraid we'll become puppets without any consciousness. At that time, we'll just be walking corpses at the mercy of others. Even Yi Shiwen could not help but be surprised when he heard this. When one cultivated to the realm of gods, he was invincible and could not be touched by thousands of tribulations. Ordinary poisonous insects could not have the slightest effect on them. How could this kind of poison be so powerful? Yes, and it is all your fault that we have become like this. Yi Shiwen, don't even think about leaving. I have already informed withered demon ancestor. You'll come soon. You are dead. Yun Keiji's face was somewhat crazed. He no longer had the confidence he had when he was fighting against Yi Shiwen. His face was filled with defeat. Even if we die, you will die with us. Ao Shaoqing roared angrily. His face was distorted and sinister like a ferocious beast. Boom! Yun Keiji was the first to attack. Boundless divine power flooded out, and the cloud-colored aura expanded endlessly. It was so majestic that even the sky trembled. Sky-splitting cloud miasma fist. With a loud roar, endless clouds blasted out from his fist, forming a majestic world of clouds. A boundless white world descended. This was a very high-level fist technique. It was very impressive. Yi Shiwen, be careful. Yun Keiji's original body is from the spirit race. He was born from a cloud. This is the technique of his original body. Mu Yunshi could not help but warn him. Smelly whore, you still dare to stand on his side. If it were not for you, we would not have ended up like this. When withered demon ancestor arrives, see how I will deal with you. Yun Keiji was instantly enraged. You still want to wait for withered demon ancestor? I don't think you can wait that long. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. All the power in his body surged out, and a thunderous sound came from his body. His blood surged like a raging wave. 3 incarnations directly entered his body, and his strength rose to its peak. This time, he would not be merciful. Moreover, he did not have that much time. That withered demon ancestor could appear at any time, so there was not much time left for them. Yi Shiwen shouted coldly, and also blasted out a fist. It was a human path fist. An incomparably huge human path world was filled with voices. It was a sea of people, and the aura of the mortal world surged out, shattering everything. It collided with this world of clouds. Yi Shiwen's human path world directly smashed the white cloud world. It was not a match for him at all. This again, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Yun Keiji was both shocked and enraged. At this moment, he recalled the legend of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. According to the legends, this was the fist technique that the Azura demon lord was most proficient in. By relying on this fist technique, he was invincible throughout the world. It was a peerless cultivation technique. However, although the 6 paths of reincarnation fist was widespread, in reality, the number of people who were able to truly cultivate a complete fist technique was extremely few. Where did this guy learn it? Yi Shiwen was about to chase after him. At this time, Ao Xiaoqing, Aksu, and Yang Shuping attacked one after another. One could imagine how powerful the 3 experts at the peak of the immortal level were. The martial arts torrent that blasted out almost destroyed half of the sky. How dare you? I haven't even dealt with you, and you dare to interfere? Yi Shiwen sneered and blasted out a fist. Animal path. Dragons, phoenixes, cheelants, white tigers, and countless other ferocious beasts rushed out. They opened their mouths and swallowed the martial arts torrent. His aura was like a prison, shocking everything. No attack, no group attack was a match for him. Everything was completely broken. Oh no! How can he be so powerful? Suddenly, Ao Xiaoqing and the other 2 felt a powerful force almost penetrating everything and blasting into their bodies. The divine light on their bodies shattered. In a panic, all their attacks were completely broken by Yi Shiwen. They were not a match for him at all. They did not even have time to prepare, and they were almost blasted away. This guy is ferocious. We have to work together. Otherwise, he will definitely break us one by one. Yun Keiji roared. Then, Yun Keiji looked at Mu Yunshi and Aksu and roared. Do you want to die? If the elder finds out what you have done, you are dead. Obviously, he felt that his side was so weak and wanted to drag Mu Yunshi down. Yi Shiwen did not continue to chase after them. Instead, he came to Mu Yunshi's side and asked, Senior sister, are you okay? I'm fine, Yun Keiji. I have thought about it. Even if I die, it is much better than becoming a plaything of the Elder Ku Mo. After being poisoned by this kind of insect poison, sooner or later, I will become a walking corpse and be played by others. I will even become his weapon to fight for him. I would rather fight to the death. Mu Yunshi took a deep breath and said with a serious expression, being able to cultivate to the Tao validation stage as a woman, how could she lack courage? Chapter 2387. However, no one would want to die if they could live. It was just that she had no other choice now. It was not that she would be fine if she did not choose. She was forced into a dead end. Seeing Yi Shiwen had inspired her courage. Yunshi, you're right. Instead of becoming the patriarch's plaything, it's better to fight. Even if we die, is there a worse ending than this? Mo Gunna's confidence was strengthened. I'll fight to the death. I have nothing else to ask for. All right. Since you want to die with Yi Shiwen, I won't stop you. Yun Keiji was furious. Yi Shiwen was already difficult to deal with. Now that Mu Yunshi and Mo Gunna were standing on the opposite side, it was even more troublesome. Brother Yi, help us hold 2 of them back first. Once we've dealt with our opponents, we'll join forces with you. Mu Yunshi said. This was the safest way she could think of. She believed that Yi Shiwen's ability was more than enough to hold 2 of them back. Don't worry, senior sister. I alone am enough to deal with these useless people. Yi Shiwen said calmly. He did not care about these people. Mu Yunshi and Mo Gunnis' eyes widened as they looked at Yi Shiwen. They could not react for a moment. He could fight for them alone? It was simply unimaginable. One must know that Yi Shiwen had fought Ao Xiaoqing, who was at peak immortal level, to the point that he could not fight back when he was only at intermediate immortal level. To them, it was already bizarre enough. They did not expect it to be even more bizarre now. Senior sister, since you're on my side today, I'll give you some riches. These people are elites, and they're all gods. They should have a lot of riches with them. Yi Shiwen's eyes were filled with killing intent. He had just obtained more than 600,000 god source and many damaged god weapons. Yi Shiwen's pockets were full, so he naturally did not care much. Ha, Yi Shiwen, I think you're crazy. Yun Keiji laughed out loud. The air was shaking. Yi Shiwen, you're too arrogant. Ao Xiaoqing calmed himself down, and a hint of anger appeared on his face. He was furious. Although Yi Shiwen had displayed unparalleled strength just now, he didn't believe that Yi Shiwen could defeat all four of them by himself. Humph, I'm just dealing with trash. What's there to be arrogant about? Do you think you're worthy of going against me? Yun Keiji, I've already discovered your previous prohibition spell. Did you think that I wouldn't discover it? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. He had just plundered over 600,000 divine roots from the wild storm eagle. Now he was constantly digesting them. At the same time, he was improving crazily. He was improving every minute and every second, and he was also improving rapidly. It was not something that they could compare to. What? Yun Keiji was shocked. No wonder they could see Yi Shiwen again. According to his original plan, Yi Shiwen should have died in the wild storm eagles. However, Yi Shiwen had escaped. It turned out that the prohibition spell had been discovered, and it had failed in the end. However, they had never imagined that Yi Shiwen had not only escaped from the flock of wild storm eagles, but he had also started a massacre in the flock of wild storm eagles. He had beheaded all the leaders of the wild storm eagles, and had emptied the wild storm eagles' countless years of savings. So what if that's the case? You're going to die with us today. Yun Keiji's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His body shook, and he took a step forward. Clouds filled the sky and surged up like monstrous waves. Clouds were fleeting and traceless. However, at this moment, in Yun Keiji's hands, a shocking power erupted. You're courting death. You won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. Yi Shiwen's expression was indifferent. He had already reached a shocking level. His understanding of the heavenly way was far beyond what others could imagine. It could be said that he was almost invincible among the immortal level. Break for me! A powerful golden light shone from his hands, and the Judgment Divine Claw was torn apart. These attacks could not hurt Yi Shiwen at all. These clouds were torn apart by Yi Shiwen, and they turned into light that filled the sky. A rain of light swirled. Yi Shiwen's next wave of attacks arrived in an instant. Human Dao Fist suppressed for me. Yi Shiwen punched out a world, and it pressed down on Yun Keiji. Bang! Yun Keiji was sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and it turned into a cloud of brilliance that filled the sky. Let's go together. I don't believe that we can't defeat him even if the four of us join forces. Ao Xiaoqing roared. He had been forced into a corner by Yi Shiwen. He's not at the eternal stage. We can definitely defeat him. Don't be scared by him. Yang Shuping also burned the divine power in his body. At this moment, the pressure that Yi Shiwen gave them was too great. Arcas had no intention of defeating Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was really too powerful. He was so powerful that a quantitative change could lead to a qualitative change. People of their level could not defeat him. Yi Shiwen, we can't let the four of them join forces. And Moguna and I will each hold one of them off. You should get rid of the other two as soon as possible. Mu Yunshi, who was at the side, quickly said in shock. Yi Shiwen had defeated the three of them just now. But in their opinion, Yi Shiwen might not be able to defeat four peak immortal levels who joined forces. However, before they could attack, Yi Shiwen had already attacked again. In his body, the three clones erupted with shocking power. They all turned into supreme power and rushed into every corner of his body. It was as if they were going to materialize. There's no need for you to attack. I alone am enough to deal with these useless people. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. He also blasted his fist down. The fist energy twisted into a boundless storm. In an instant, the space shattered and turned into glass. Then, the fist energy broke through and instantly blasted in front of the four of them, without any difference. The four of them were even more shocked. Yi Shiwen's strength was tyrannical, but his control of strength was not weak at all. This kind of method made them tremble with fear. Arcas, who was at the forefront, was sent flying on the spot. The hellfire that protected his body was not just a kind of flame. Similarly, these flames had been sacrificed into a powerful magic tool to protect his body. At the same time, it could be spread out in an instant and burn all opponents to death. It could be said to be a very powerful magic tool. However, at this time in front of Yi Shiwen, it was useless at all. It exploded on the spot. His whole body was seriously injured by the powerful power of the explosion. His body, which was composed of countless stones, was directly shattered and turned into countless fragments. Killed with one punch, Yi Shiwen's power was so great that it was completely beyond everyone's expectations. On the other side, Yang Shuping was also directly hit. The magic tool on his body could not withstand Yi Shiwen's fist at all. No one knew how terrifying the burning power of the three incarnations was. Yi Shiwen's strength itself was far beyond theirs. Not to mention, the strength of the three incarnations was equal to Yi Shiwen's strength. It was equivalent to them being four people. However, Yi Shiwen was also four people. What was there to be afraid of? Moreover, compared to them joining forces, Yi Shiwen was the one who had truly integrated the power of four people into one. Yang Shuping's body directly collapsed. Blood splattered and dyed the blue sky red. Another god was killed. At this time, Ao Xiaoqing was even more miserable. His Dragon Emperor's Bell had completely manifested, but it could not withstand the powerful attack of Yi Shiwen's 4-in-1 attack. It was completely shattered by one punch and exploded in the air. He himself was also sent flying. He could only survive because of the defense power of the Dragon Emperor's Bell. However, even so, the Dragon Emperor's Bell that he had spent countless days and nights to refine was completely shattered at this moment. It could be said that it was a heavy loss. Ao Xiaoqing directly turned into a ball of golden light. He was actually forced to reveal his Dragon Tribe's body. He suddenly used the Dragon Tribe's brilliant body technique and flew thousands of miles in an instant. However, how could he be faster than Yi Shiwen? He took a big stride and chased after him. The sky-flipping seal smashed down. Bang! Ao Xiaoqing's powerful Dragon Tribe body directly turned into a ball of blood mist. He only had time to scream before he died tragically. I can't accept this. His voice was still echoing, but it could not reverse his defeat at all. In an instant, 3 experts at the peak of the immortal level were directly killed by him. They exploded in the air. Mu Yunxi and Mo Gunna were completely shocked. They had thought that Yi Shiwen might be very strong, or even completely stronger than them. However, they had never imagined that he could be so tyrannical. Not only did he kill them with a single punch, but even their divine tools were also destroyed. Yi Shiwen's body was probably comparable to a middle-grade divine tool. How could a normal human's body be so strong to such an extent? Yun Keiji retreated continuously, trying to avoid Yi Shiwen's attack. He was almost scared to death. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so terrifying. He really killed 3 experts at the peak of the immortal level with one punch. Why did he feel that he had become even more terrifying than before? His intuition was right. Yi Shiwen had indeed become stronger, and it was not just a little bit. He had condensed 2 ancient characters in a row. Compared to the time when he was fighting with Ao Xiaoqing, his strength was more than just a little bit stronger. Under the amplification of the martial arts incarnation, his combat strength had expanded to an extremely shocking level. However, he saw that after Yi Shiwen had dealt with the 3 troublesome people, he suddenly flew in front of him. Almost in an instant, accompanied by the sound of thunder, Yi Shiwen blasted a punch in front of him. Bang! Yun Keiji was blasted away again. He was already severely injured. How could he withstand the power of Yi Shiwen's punch? His body exploded in the air. Chapter 2388. Killing 4 people in a row. Mo Gunnis' eyes widened as she said in disbelief, "I've been practicing for tens of thousands of years, and I've seen countless geniuses. Many of them are powerful. How can there be such a monster?" She obviously couldn't accept how Yi Shiwen could be so powerful. If he was at the peak of the immortal level, she might be able to accept it. But Yi Shiwen was only at the middle stage of the immortal level. It was unimaginable that he could do this. "Senior sister, I killed these people and left some divine objects. You should take them away quickly." Yi Shiwen looked at them and said. At this time, there were many divine objects moving up and down in the pool of blood. They were originally kept in their bodies, but now they had all burst out. "Junior brother, we can't use these," Mu Yinshi said. "We are all poisoned by ancestor Kumo. We can't leave his range of 100,000 miles. Moreover, he can sense our position anytime and anywhere. Now he must be able to sense the death of Ao Shaoqing and the others. I'm afraid he won't let us go. Anyway, we'll die sooner or later. I've decided to stay and fight with him. Even if we die in the end, it's much better than being half dead like this." "Yes, Yi Shiwen, you should take these away," Mo Gunnis said. "The 2 of us are fated to die. These things will be taken away by Forefather Ku and Mo, even if we leave them here. There is no meaning to it. Take them all with you. When you enter the imperishable realm one day, you must take revenge for us." Mo Gunnis' expression was extremely serious, and her eyes were gray. For her, life might end today. Yi Shiwen listened and realized that this was what they were worried about. "Senior sister, if that's the case, you don't have to worry," Yi Shiwen said calmly. "Although I don't know how powerful this goo poison is, and I may not have the means to eradicate it, but I can seal it and isolate all connections with it. In that case, even if this Ku-Mo ancestor is powerful, he won't be able to affect you." Yi Shiwen's words made both of their eyes lit up. Who would want to die if they could survive? Although Ku-Mo ancestor was powerful, it wasn't impossible for him to survive. Especially Mu Yunshi, who came from the Hidden Valley. There were countless experts in the Hidden Valley, including king-level experts. One could imagine how many experts there were in the Hidden Valley. However, because of the withered demon ancestor, they couldn't go more than 100,000 miles away from the withered demon ancestor, and they couldn't even call for help. More importantly, as time passed, their consciousness would be devoured by the goo insects, and they would become walking corpses and puppets. That was why Ku-Mo ancestor was so relieved to leave them here. He thought that they wouldn't be able to escape, but who knew that they would encounter such a freak like Yi Shiwen? "Junior brother Yi, do you really have a way?" Mu Yinshi said in a pleasantly surprised voice. She grabbed Yi Shiwen's sleeve, and her tightly clenched little hand showed how excited she was right now. It was as if a drowning person had suddenly found a life-saving straw. In the abyss of despair, a ray of sunshine had suddenly appeared. "Well, there shouldn't be a problem," Yi Shiwen said. "We don't have much time now. We can't continue to delay. The withered demon ancestor should be arriving soon." "Well, hurry up," Mo Gunnis said. "If I can escape from this disaster today, I will definitely remember today's kindness. And if there is anything you want me to do in the future, I won't dare to disobey." Yi Shiwen nodded, and first looked for Mu Yunshi, and probed her with his divine sense. Sure enough, there was a dark place in Mu Yunshi's dantian, and in this endless darkness, there seemed to be a ferocious beast roaring and entrenched in it, and it looked very terrifying. This darkness was still constantly spreading, and because Mu Yunshi had opened up everything to him, Yi Shiwen could see everything clearly. "Let me try first." The word seal emerged from Yi Shiwen's body and directly blasted into Mu Yunshi's body, forming a monstrous big net, and fell down towards the darkness. Ah! At this moment, Mu Yunshi's little face was flushed red, and Yi Shiwen's energy poured into her body, giving her a kind of numb and itchy feeling, and she couldn't help but moan. After moaning, her face became even redder, and she quickly and carefully glanced at Yi Shiwen. only to find that he was treating her seriously, and only then did she feel a little relieved, and at least she didn't embarrass herself too much. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was indeed using all his strength to suppress the goo poison in her body. The goo poison in Mu Yunshi's body occupied the darkest place, and at this moment, the spiritual power that Yi Shiwen poured into Mu Yunshi's body directly condensed into a human form in the vast and boundless space inside her body. After becoming a god, the domain that they originally formed would open up a part of the world inside their body, and when they cultivated to the level of the divine master of the sage realm, this part of the world would become a divine kingdom, and that would be a complete world. At this moment, this darkness had already occupied a large part of Mu Yunshi's body, and this had only happened in a short time of slightly more than a day. If this continued, perhaps in less than 8 to 10 days, this darkness would completely occupy the world inside Mu Yunshi's body, and in the end, it would really become a situation where there was no way to get rid of it, and when that time came, it would really be a dead end. No wonder Mu Yunshi and the others were so desperate. This goo poison was spreading too fast. There was no way to stop it at all. This was a trap set up by a master of the eternal realm, and it involved a very sinister method like the goo poison. Yi Shiwen, who didn't have much knowledge about this goo poison, had no way to eradicate it, and could only seal this place first. This would stop the goo poison from continuing to absorb the spiritual power in Mu Yunshi's body to grow, and when they returned to the Hidden Valley, there would naturally be experts who would help Mu Yunshi eliminate this goo poison. Roar! Yi Shiwen heard a huge roar of a fierce beast, and in the darkness below, a burst of fierce beast's roar transmitted over. Beast, you still want to commit evil? Yi Shiwen shouted coldly, and a seal word appeared in his hand, and this seal word formed an incomparably huge heavenly net and shrouded on the spot. Roar! There was another loud roar, and a huge claw grabbed towards this seal word, and it was very terrifying. The entire seal word actually shook, and this was a very terrifying power. If it was Yi Shiwen's body, then needless to say, it would only be a matter of minutes to kill this goo. But now, it was just a little bit of spiritual power incarnation, and this goo poison had already merged with Mu Yunshi, so he simply couldn't act recklessly, and had to be very careful. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen continued to drop the heavenly net, but this goo still wanted to struggle, and still wanted to rush out. However, the power of this seal word was very terrifying, and so far, it was still one of the most powerful ancient words that Yi Shiwen had mastered. It could be said that his understanding of the seal word had reached the pinnacle. Slowly, Yi Shiwen finally completely sealed this dark place, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, because it was inside Mu Yunshi's body, so he had to be very careful. Otherwise, with his character, there would be no need to be so careful, and he could directly suppress it on the spot. At this time, he withdrew his divine sense from Mu Yunshi's body and looked up. Mu Yunshi's small face was red, and her crystal-clear face was already covered with a red flush, and she looked at Yi Shiwen with a rather strange expression. However, he didn't think too much and said, "Senior sister, now that I have sealed this goo, I don't have the ability to eradicate this goo, but just sealing it is enough, and when the time comes, senior sister can go back and find the master to remove this goo." My understanding of this kind of method is really very limited. His understanding of goo was naturally not as shallow as he said, but that was under normal circumstances. This Ku-Mo ancestor was obviously a master of goo, and showing off in front of him was tantamount to showing off one's slight skill in front of an expert. Ah, it's done. Mu Yunshi still hadn't reacted, and seemed to be still immersed in the feeling just now, and then her face turned red with joy. This kind of feeling, for her, was like escaping from death. Originally thought that she was dead, and even planned to perish together with Ku-Mo ancestor, but Yi Shiwen finally gave her such a surprise. She saw dense fine sweat on Yi Shiwen's forehead, and obviously, the seal just now was also very exhausting for him. Although it was only for a moment, and it evaporated, but she still saw it with her own eyes. It really worked, that's great, Imogen said in surprise. Really can live, who wants to die? Her determination to face death just now completely vanished in an instant. Well, that's right. Now I will seal this goo for you. Yi Shiwen nodded and said. With Mu Yunshi's experience, when Yi Shiwen wanted to seal the goo in Mo Gunna's body again, it was much easier, and it could even be said to be as easy as flipping his hand. Soon, he had already sealed the goo in Mo Gunna's body. Seeing that she really couldn't feel the goo in her body, Mo Gunna really believed that the goo in her body was indeed sealed. Tears appeared in her eyes. Although it was only for a moment, it was difficult to hide her excitement. All right, let's divide these divine items and leave immediately, Yi Shiwen said, and he quickly divided the divine items into 3 equal parts, one for each person, but both of them refused to take it and insisted that Yi Shiwen take more. After all, they didn't do anything, and it was already inappropriate for them to divide it. In the end, Yi Shiwen took half of it, and in the end, he was distributed 200,000 divine source and many divine items. Mo Gunna and Mu Yunshi each received 100,000 divine source. It was considered a sudden windfall. One must know that this was equivalent to the entire wealth of a master at the peak of the immortality realm. Just as they were about to leave, the situation suddenly changed. Chapter 2389. Just as they were about to leave, the situation suddenly changed. Who is it? How dare you kill my puppet? An angry roar pierced through the void. Suddenly, a strange whining sound rang out in the world. It was a very terrifying sound in an instant. Demonic wind blew and covered everything in an instant. A terrifying demonic power swept down and suppressed them. Yi Shiwen and the other two's expressions suddenly changed. Even though they were far away, they could still feel that this boundless and terrifying demonic power contained a kind of energy that could destroy heaven and earth. An eternal realm master. Yi Shiwen's complexion suddenly changed. He immediately guessed that this person was probably already a master of eternal realm. That kind of terrifying power was completely crushing. Even the current him couldn't possibly be this power's opponent. Although he had the ability to defeat a peak immortal level, there was still a huge gap between him and an indestructible level. This was the power of an indestructible level expert. Otherwise, Mu Yunshi and the rest would not have been defeated by the ancestor of the withered demon. Ku-mo ancestor. It's Ku-mo ancestor. Yi Shiwen run? At this moment, Mu Yunshi was the first to react. She was too familiar with this demonic power. It was this terrifying demonic power that almost ended her life here and destroyed her life. Run! That was all Mo Gunna could say. There was a look of fear in her eyes. The scene of Ku-mo ancestor defeating all 6 of them and forcing them to swallow the venomous insect suddenly appeared in her mind. Her eyes were filled with incomparable horror. Just like the despair that Yun Keiji and the others felt when facing Yi Shiwen, her eyes now also showed the same kind of emotion. He was Ku-mo ancestor. Yi Shiwen only had time to think of this in his mind. Suddenly, in the sky, a skinny demonic claw fell from the sky, tearing the space apart. It actually launched a shocking attack towards them from a distance. This was the strength of an eternal realm master. In this place where the law was severely suppressed, the Eternal Realm Master had lost the terrifying ability to attack from thousands of miles away. Even long-range attacks were impossible. Only imperishable realm experts who could slightly comprehend the laws of this place could launch a terrifying attack like the Big Hole. Damn it, it's too late. We can't retreat. We can only fight with him. Yi Shiwen clenched his teeth and said. It was simply too late. He couldn't wait any longer. Human Dao Fist. He punched out, and the endless power of the mortal world rushed out from the gaps of his fingers, forming a world of the human path, and blasted towards the demonic claw. Bang! There was a loud sound of metal colliding, and then the void collapsed violently. Everything was shattered into pieces in an instant. Pooh! A figure flew out like a kite with a broken string. That person was none other than Yi Shiwen. He spurted out a mouthful of golden blood and sprinkled it in the blue sky. Yi Shiwen, Junior Brother Yi. Mu Yunxi and Yi Shiwen quickly flew up and looked at Yi Shiwen nervously. Yi Shiwen flew in the void for hundreds of miles in a row, and only then did he manage to pour out all the power. But from the beginning, the place he passed was like a painting, torn by a monstrous force, and a huge crack appeared. It was pitch black, and countless chaotic energies poured out, looking extremely terrifying. Blood kept flowing out from the corner of Yi Shiwen's mouth, and the Phoenix regeneration technique was also constantly running in his body. He only felt dizzy in front of his eyes. He kept gasping for breath. The claw just now almost killed him. He finally felt how terrifying the angry attack of Ancestor Kumo was. Yi Shiwen, are you okay? Mu Yunxi quickly said with concern. She only saw Yi Shiwen being blasted away just now, and she thought he was dead, because she also saw how powerful Ancestor Kumo was. 6 people joined forces, but they were still easily killed by him. It was simply unimaginable. Yi Shiwen frowned and said, I'm fine. This is the strength of an eternal realm master. Even if I go all out, I'm afraid I have no chance of winning. Imogen wanted to roll her eyes when she heard what he said. What did he mean by there was not much chance of winning? Even those geniuses who were at the peak of the immortal level were rare enough to fight against a veteran immortal stage master like the Kumo ancestor. It was enough to shock the world. He, who was in the middle stage of the immortal realm, could achieve such a level. It was enough to scare people to death. He actually thought that there was a chance of winning if he fought with Ancestor Kumo. Did this madman really consider fighting with Ancestor Withered Devil? Originally, she was still a little arrogant in her heart. But through the previous incident, she had clearly realized the gap between her and an eternal realm master. It was not something that could be calculated with logic, and she couldn't even take one move. At that time, she was almost defeated after one move. The difference in strength between both sides was too big. Of course, otherwise how could an eternal realm master be so terrifying? If Ancestor Kumo was so easy to deal with, he would have been captured long ago. Mu Yunxi said angrily. Yi Shiwen smiled, but he wasn't just saying that. One must know that Ancestor Kumo appeared here at this time. He must have been attracted by the 10,000 spell roulette and the Dharma King. At that time, it was very likely that he would be a direct opponent. So how could he not consider fighting with him? It was indeed terrifying. An ordinary expert at the peak of the immortality realm couldn't even withstand a single blow. That punch would have been enough to turn his entire arm into ashes if he had been replaced by an ordinary expert. Yi Shiwen had relied on his gilded tyrant form to send him flying. It was already very rare. In the sky, the demon energy was getting more and more abundant, and the demon clouds were already condensing in the sky. Let's leave quickly. Take advantage of the fact that his next attack hasn't arrived yet. Yi Shiwen stood up and said, not daring to stay any longer. If they were in the outside world, Ancestor Kumo wouldn't even need to use this method. He could directly teleport here with just a thought, and he could attack continuously from a distance. However, in this place, all experts from the outside world would be suppressed. Even imperishable realm experts would not be able to attack continuously. This was their chance. And Mu Yunxi and Yi Shiwen quickly nodded. Yi Shiwen grabbed the waists of both of them and leaped forward like an arrow. He transformed into a boundless radiance on the spot, and the devil wings behind him stretched out. Originally, this boundless devil energy not only did not hinder him, but on the contrary, it became his assistance, allowing him to fly thousands of miles away in an instant. Boom! The moment he flew out, he only heard a loud roar, and the place where they were just standing turned into ashes. The 3 of them had a lingering feeling of fear. If they had been a little slower, they would have died there. Ancestor Kumo was really too terrifying. Hurry up! Yi Shiwen didn't dare to stay. While running the Phoenix regeneration technique to repair the injuries in his body, his demon wings shook frantically, and he fled. Not long after they left, Ancestor Kumo's figure suddenly appeared in the sky. He was an old devil with wrinkles all over his face. His entire body was pitch black and covered in black scales. He had a green face and fangs, making him look extremely ferocious. There were 2 goat horns on his forehead, and his body was a bit skinny. His entire arm, in particular, was completely devoid of flesh, leaving only skin and bones. Behind him was a pair of huge flesh wings that looked a bit like the flesh wings of a bat, but there were many places where there was no skin, only bones. He opened a pair of blood-red eyes, full of murderous intent, and roared. The long roar shook the world, and the void collapsed under his long roar. This scene looked extremely shocking, and at the same time, extremely terrifying. "Don't even think of escaping from my hands," he said fiercely, and then chased in the direction where Yi Shiwen escaped. 10 days later, in a remote valley, Yi Shiwen and the other two had just settled on the top. "He shouldn't continue to chase after us," Imogen could not help but say, and her face was a little pale. They had been running for their lives for the past 10 days and 10 nights. For a whole 10 days, they did not dare to breathe at all. It could be said that the journey was full of danger, especially in the Dharma King's tomb. There were many incomparably powerful laws of life in many places. In these 10 days and 10 nights, they almost went into danger dozens of times and almost died, but they did not dare to stop because it was really because Ancestor Kuimo was really chasing after them. Once they stopped, Ancestor Kuimo would be able to catch up with them. If it was an ordinary immortal level, their magic power would have long been exhausted in such a crazy escape. Even with the recovery ability of a god, there was no way to recover so quickly. Only Yi Shiwen, who had the Phoenix regeneration technique, was able to persist for so long. However, his spiritual power was only left with less than half. Judging from his recovery ability, one could fully imagine what kind of terrifying attacks he had encountered in these 10 days and 10 nights. "There should be no more. I can't feel it anymore. He should have given up. Unless he doesn't want the Dharma roulette anymore, he won't continue to chase after us," Yi Shiwen said with a sigh of relief. It was because he could not feel Ancestor Kumo's aura that he dared to stop. Hearing his words, the two women heaved a sigh of relief. Among the three of them, Yi Shiwen's perception was the most extensive. If Yi Shiwen could not feel it, then it seemed that Ancestor Kumo had really given up. "Why didn't we do it? If we meet him again, are we going to continue to run like this?" Imogen said. If they wanted to go to the Dharma King's tomb, they would definitely meet again. "Humph, when we meet again, it's hard to say who will run away," Yi Shiwen said with a confident look on his face. Chapter 2390. Yi Shiwen had a dignified look on his face. He had been chased like a stray dog for the past 10 days and 10 nights. Although he hadn't fought with them directly, but he had been chased around like this for a long time. It was extremely depressing for him. He didn't dare to stop at all. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew that the Kumo ancestor was definitely coming for the Dharma King's tomb, he wouldn't have been able to capture them. Otherwise, he would have already planned to escape back to the hidden city. Everything was just as he had expected. Withered Demon Ancestor finally gave up when he couldn't catch up to him. Although the imperishable realm, Withered Demon Ancestor was far stronger than him, he still couldn't catch up to Yi Shiwen, who had demon wings. In addition, he had condensed the word wind and the word thunder. His comprehension of the wind and thunder attribute laws had reached an extremely high realm. This was directly reflected in his demon wings, which was far faster than before. Fortunately, the patriarch of the withered demon was a level higher than him. Otherwise, no one on a mortal level would be able to catch up with him. He was confident that even if his body movement skill was not the best, he would be one of the best. The other two finally breathed a sigh of relief. These 10 days and 10 nights were thrilling and exciting for them. There were several times when they could have died in the mouth of the beasts. Fortunately, they managed to avoid the danger in the end. They had a whole new level of respect for Yi Shiwen's strength. It must be known that this time, he was competing with a powerful Eternal Realm Master, but there was no clear winner. This was simply a miracle. Ancestor Kumo had lost all his patience in the end. However, when they heard Yi Shiwen's words, they still looked at him dumbfounded. If they hadn't seen too many miracles in the past few days and knew that Yi Shiwen wasn't a person who would speak without thinking, they would almost be speechless. The next time they met Kumo Ancestor, who would run away? If word of this got out, it would probably shock countless people. If Ancestor Kumo was so easy to deal with, he wouldn't have roamed free for so long. What? Do you all think I'm joking? A proud smile suddenly appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. This time, it's all thanks to Ancestor Kumo. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to progress so quickly. At this time, the two women saw that there was an invisible power of principles wrapped around Yi Shiwen's body. Many principles had condensed into talismans and were floating around his body. They were constantly bobbing up and down. A powerful force was about to erupt from his body like a volcanic eruption. Both of them were experienced gods, so how could they not know that this was a sign of a breakthrough? Only when one was on the verge of a breakthrough and was unable to control the power within one's body would such a powerful law power appear. However, the power that erupted from Yi Shiwen's body made them feel a chill down their spines. That kind of terrifying power even gave them the illusion that they were going to be suppressed. It was as if he had not broken through to the late immortal level, but rather he had broken through from the peak of immortal level to the eternal realm. They suddenly remembered why they felt a sense of familiarity. Although the feeling that Ancestor Kumo gave them was completely different, the feeling of suppression at that time was exactly the same. Oh my God, what kind of monster is he? Such a helpless groan flashed through the hearts of the two women. They could not believe such a fact. However, after thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be normal. His current combat strength was already comparable to the peak of immortal level, and he was almost invincible. If he went further, wouldn't he be even more invincible and truly be comparable to the terrifying existence of the eternal realm? After entering the eternal realm, the status was completely different. The immortal level was just immortal, but the eternal realm was indestructible, and it was even more difficult to kill. For the immortal inheritance, the eternal realm was much more important than the immortal level. If Yi Shiwen really had such strength, it would naturally be a great thing for them. At least, their safety would be greatly guaranteed. Even if they encountered the Ancestor Kumo again, they would not have to worry about being captured again. At this time, Yi Shiwen did not speak anymore. Instead, he closed his eyes and began to break through with all his strength. He did not say those words just now out of anger. Indeed, because of the Ancestor Kumo, his original time to break through had been greatly advanced. Any breakthrough to the god level would require a lot of time. Initially, he only planned to go into closed-door cultivation to digest what he had gained this time and spend a few years to break through to the advanced stage of immortal level. This was already much faster than ordinary gods who could easily take hundreds or thousands of years. If not for the mysterious space and nearly 1 million god source, he would not have been able to do it at all. However, it was different now. During the 10 days and 10 nights of escape, he was constantly on high alert, and the potential of his entire body had been stimulated to the limit. The level that might have taken a long time to break through was almost as thin as a cicada's wing, and he could break through it at any time. As expected, the best opportunity to break through is only at the last moment of life and death. Yi Shiwen had to admit that 1,000 years of peaceful cultivation might not be as good as the realization of escaping from death. The state where one's entire body's potential was stimulated was the closest to the state of enlightenment. Seeing that Yi Shiwen closed his eyes and began to cultivate, the two women immediately set up a formation outside the valley, sealing the entire valley. Then, they stood aside to protect Yi Shiwen. At the same time, they closed their eyes and quietly comprehended what they had gained this time. Yi Shiwen was not the only one who had gained a lot from this escape. Although it was impossible for them to break through on the spot like Yi Shiwen, they would go back and go in a closed-door cultivation for a few years after this. With the wealth and realization that they had gained this time, it would not be long before they really broke through to the indestructible level. Who was the one who brought all of this? It was Yi Shiwen. Both of them were extremely grateful to him for this. As time passed, the aura on Yi Shiwen's body became stronger and stronger. A kind of destructive power kept rotating around his body. Even looking at it from afar, it gave people a feeling that the world was going to be destroyed. This had already surpassed the power of immortal level, and it was almost at the level of the indestructible level. The immortal level was to come into contact with the mystery of immortality and the rules of immortality. It was to pull oneself out of the long river of fate and jump out of the three realms and the five elements. On the other hand, the indestructible level was different. They had already come into contact with the mystery of the world's destruction. The mystery of destruction was under their control, so it was even more difficult to destroy them. And the master gods who had reached the sage level could even freely grasp the mystery of immortality and destruction, using it as the foundation to create their own kingdom, their own world. Therefore, in the immortal level, indestructible level, and sage level, the most violent and violent one was the indestructible level because the power of destruction was always dominant. The destructive aura on his body became more and more intense. Everything around him was disintegrated by him, like atoms, and the surrounding space turned into glass. In the past, such a scene could only appear in the most intense battle, but now it had appeared around him. One could imagine how terrifying the destructive power around him was at this moment. And both Mu Yunxi and Mo Gunna were also awakened by this terrifying aura. They were originally in a state of half-closed-door cultivation, and now they were directly awakened. Their eyes were filled with shock when they looked at Yi Shiwen. Was this really a terrifying level that could be reached by an immortal level? Even an expert of the indestructible level might not be so terrifying. It was simply unimaginable. However, they did not know that although Yi Shiwen was only breaking through to the advanced stage of immortal level, in order to break through to the combat strength of the indestructible level, it was actually more difficult to break through to the indestructible level than ordinary peak immortal level. Time was still passing by quickly, and the destructive aura on Yi Shiwen's body became more and more intense. It formed a powerful cyclone, forming an extremely powerful storm around him. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was also enduring the devastation of the destructive aura, truly condensing the destruction rule, turning it into a monstrous power that integrated into his body. He wanted to cross this most important step. If he crossed it, he would be comparable to the indestructible level. If he could not, then all his previous efforts would be in vain. Countless power of the rule completely erupted at this moment, forming a frenzy of the rule around him, pushing forward bit by bit. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as a powerful force burst forth from his body. A boundless destructive aura was released from his body. At the moment when this destructive force was about to blast Mu Yunxi and Mo Gunna away, it actually slowly retracted, as if it was suppressed by a powerful force. At this moment, a strange scene happened. It was as if they were watching a replay of a big explosion. The force that originally erupted to destroy the world was now forcefully retracted, as if nothing had happened. If it were not for the shattered space fragments in the sky and the glassy space in the sky, it might even give people the illusion that nothing had happened at all. The two women had a look of lingering fear. Just now, they clearly felt that a powerful aura was about to hit them. If they were hit, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen retracted it at the last critical moment. Otherwise, the consequences would be simply unimaginable. "Are you guys okay?" Yi Shiwen asked. We're fine. Did you break through?" Mu Yunxi quickly waved her hand and said. Suddenly, the way she looked at Yi Shiwen changed a little because she found that Yi Shiwen's body was exuding an unknown aura. It was faintly discernible, making him seem unfathomable. Like a vast galaxy, there was a powerful force being born and destroyed within it. Compared to before the closed-door training, he had definitely become stronger, but to what extent, she could not sense it. She only felt that he should have become very strong. He should have become stronger. And that's right. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists, as if holding a powerful force. Chapter 2391. With this series of cultivation, Yi Shiwen finally broke through to the advanced immortal level. His combat power had even surpassed the immortal level and reached the level of the indestructible level. Moreover, he was getting stronger every second. After the breakthrough, There were about 200,000 god sources left that had not been consumed. Some of these god sources were used to refine the Tianyuan mirror, and the rest was used for cultivation. It was not obvious on the surface, but only he knew that he was getting stronger all the time. At that moment, Yi Shiwen only felt that his whole body was crystallizing. Countless rules were in front of him, and they were much clearer. Every cell was blooming with a bright light. The assassin felt that one of his cells could blast through a planet. He was full of power, and he faintly felt that heaven and earth were under his control. He faintly felt that he was going to integrate with heaven and earth. This feeling was simply a whole new realm. However, he had only faintly touched this realm, and he had not really reached it yet. You're really... No wonder the master said that your future is limitless. Mu Yunxi looked at Yi Shiwen with a bitter smile. He could not imagine that Yi Shiwen had improved in such a short time. According to the master, he had only achieved Tao for a few hundred years. Even if he did not consider the actual combat power and only considered the realm, he had only reached the peak of the immortal level after tens of thousands of years of cultivation. It seemed that Yi Shiwen would be able to achieve the results of his tens of thousands of years of cultivation in less than 1,000 years. But it was more than 1/10 of his. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. Emogana also reacted at this time. After the joy, she also felt a deep sense of helplessness. Compared to such a monster, her realm was indeed nothing. That happy mood of breaking into the imperishable realm, at this time, didn't count for much. She really did not know whether to cry or laugh. However, with such a tyrannical strength as a guarantee, their safety was at least guaranteed. All right, we have wasted a lot of time. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go. Yi Shiwen said and flew out like an arrow, turning into a graceful swan that flew away. He could not wait any longer. He did not want to wait a moment longer. Initially, he wanted to get the 500,000 divine source as a reward. Now that he had achieved his goal in advance, he still needed the 500,000 divine source very much. This was because he wanted to break through to the peak of immortal level, and he needed a massive amount of divine source. As for Mu Yunxi and Mo Gunna, both of them also stepped on their divine lights and chased after them. The three of them quickly shuttled back and forth in the tomb of Dharma King. The powerful and ancient law life forms that were originally very difficult for them to deal with weren't Yi Shiwen's opponent at all, and were blown up one after another. Even if it encountered a very powerful opponent, it wouldn't be able to catch up with Yi Shiwen, who had already unfolded his devil wings. His movement technique had already reached the pinnacle. The strength of the imperishable realm allowed him to sweep through everything in his path. No one was a match for him at all. Yi Shiwen and the other two also pierced through like a sharp sword. They didn't stop because they were also in a hurry. Yi Shiwen, although you've killed Yun Keiji and the others now, it's fine if it's just Yun Keiji. However, Ao Xiaoqing has a great reputation on Dragon Island. Although he isn't as famous as Ao Chaozong, he shouldn't be underestimated either. When the time comes, I'm afraid that Dragon Island will also investigate us. Mu Yunxi said worriedly. Don't worry, it's nothing. They won't be able to get any evidence at all. The flesh and blood will be completely devoured in no time. They won't be able to find any traces. As for Dragon Island suspicions, what's the use? Do you think they can rely on suspicions to come to Hidden Valley to capture people? Yi Shiwen said coldly. But don't worry, I've already thought it through. When the people from Dragon Island really come, you can say that they were killed by Kuimo Ancestor and push everything onto Kuimo Ancestor. If they don't believe it, you can show them the goo worm of Kuimo Ancestor in your body. When that happens, they won't be able to say anything. Mu Yunxi thought about it and nodded. Although the Dragon Island was rude and unreasonable, it was impossible for them to cause trouble for the Hidden Valley without any evidence. Moreover, it was normal for anyone to die in the God Burial Starry Ocean. There were too many people fighting and killing here. There were also many killings between the major forces. However, it was rare for them to shed all pretense of cordiality. The three of them didn't speak a word along the way. After flying for 3 days and 3 nights, they directly crossed the entire 10,000 Dharma King's graveyard and arrived at the tomb. They would definitely not go wrong if they set off directly towards the most central area of the graveyard. Coupled with Yi Shiwen's overwhelming strength, it was very easy for them to find it. This tomb doesn't seem to be in this space. It's almost a separate entity. When they finally arrived, they discovered that the tomb in front of them was incomparably huge. It was almost like a continent. Moreover, all kinds of light rays were distorted. They couldn't clearly see what was inside. It was as if it was protected by layers of space formations. This is indeed a separate entity. If I'm not wrong, the entire graveyard should be transformed from the 10,000 Dharma King's divine kingdom. That's why there are so many powerful life forms born from the powerful principles. Yi Shiwen squinted his eyes and suddenly opened the eye of redemption. He had seen such a situation once before. The Death Lord's divine kingdom had turned into the abyss of death. It had almost become a dangerous place in the Xian world. However, it was different from the Death Lord's transformation into a single undead and dark life form. The 10,000 Dharma King was many times more tyrannical. Moreover, he had the nickname of the 10,000 Dharma King. He was very proficient in many magical techniques and magical powers. The life forms that he had transformed were also more diverse. Emoguna nodded and said, "According to the records of our Naga clan, this graveyard is indeed evolved from the 10,000 Dharma King's divine kingdom. The scale is also getting larger and larger. There are more and more terrifying life forms in it. Some powerful life forms can even cultivate. It's not to be underestimated. However, this graveyard should be hidden in layers of space. It's not right in front of us like what we see," said Yi Shiwen. "It should be mixed in the cracks of many spaces. It seems that we have to cross layers of space. Even if the gods claim to control space, in fact, they would still get lost in the endless chaos. It was like a ship trying to find a piece of land in the boundless sea. In the boundless primal chaos, the layers of space and planes were like islands. Some seemed to be close at hand, but in fact it was so far away that one couldn't reach it in a lifetime. However, for Yi Shiwen, there were no obstacles. He directly tore the space in front of him with both hands. The turbulence of space and the obstacles were meaningless. Then he rushed in. The two women quickly rushed in together. When they really rushed in, they found that it was a whole new world. It was completely different from the environment just now. As soon as he entered this space, he immediately felt the surrounding laws become active. It was completely different from the feeling of the broken laws outside. These laws were very active, as if they were being pulled in by some kind of power. Yi Shiwen had just stood still when he saw that around the tomb, countless powerful members of the Tian clan were casting spells, forming an incomparably powerful array. These powerful Tian clan warriors, even the most ordinary ones, were at the peak of the demigod realm. A casual captain was an expert of the eternal realm. It was simply unimaginable how many experts were hidden among them. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't guess. Under the leadership of some experts of the Tian clan, they were chanting a strange incantation. In the sky, all kinds of talismans were flying. It was a strange language, ancient, obscure, and difficult to understand. With Yi Shiwen's current realm, he only needed to take a look at any language. He didn't need anyone to teach him, and he could learn it. However, he actually couldn't understand this kind of ancient language. This was the ancient language of the Tian clan. It once represented the Great Tao. It was said that this was the language closest to the Great Tao other than the divine text. The divine text could only be understood by the gods. It had already surpassed the shape of words and directly communicated with the meaning of the Great Tao. However, the language of the Tian clan was different. It was shaped, and even gods could understand it. How terrifying was this? Even ordinary members of the Tian clan could understand such a profound Tao text. No wonder there were so many experts in the Tian clan. They were unimaginably powerful. Back then, the prosperity of the Tian clan could be seen from the language. What a powerful race. A single race can actually fight against all the races in the universe. Although they failed, they're indeed amazing. Yi Shiwen sighed slightly. His gaze swept across the sky. only to see that in the void, there were many tyrannical figures hiding. Other than the Tian clan army, who were setting up array formations here, as if nothing had happened. No one else had the guts to suddenly appear. They were all experts who had heard the news this time. The 10,000 Dharma King was in existence who was half a step into the Great Tao in the Tian clan. He was just a little bit away from truly achieving the Great Tao and becoming a first-rate emperor. Many people coveted his tomb. Even without the rewards given by the major forces, there were still many people who came for the 10,000 Dharma roulette. Let's hide first. Don't stand out. Yi Shiwen immediately waved his hand and covered the whereabouts of the three of them. Since no one stood out, he naturally didn't want to stand out and become the target of the Tian clan army. At this time, only the chanting of the Tian clan's ancient language echoed in the entire space. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.